Give me big old buckets of butterbeer. Give me big old barrels of butterbeer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here of the sweet old butter beer.
Welcome to the Three Broomsticks. We invite you to pull up a chair, grab a butterbeer, and settle in for a hearty discussion about Harry Potter. I'm Sophia Jenkins.
And I'm Irvin Cateman. I'm sort of your substitute host for a bit. We had a bit of a scheduling / technical snafu. So you're going to have Sierra and Taavi joining soon. But I'm just sort of here to welcome you in before I take my leave. And I'm also here to welcome our fantastic guest for the episode, Lillian.
Yay!
Lillian, it's so good to have you with us. Welcome to the pub.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? You know, your Hogwarts house, favorite book, favorite character, and sort of what your journey in the Harry Potter fandom has been.
Of course. So I'm a Gryffindor, a rare, fandom Gryffindor. My favorite book was, for many, many years, Prisoner of Azkaban. But in my last couple of rereads, I realized how much I really love Goblet of Fire. So I have recently switched over to Goblet of Fire. My favorite character is Remus Lupin, which will surprise nobody that knows me. And and my journey to Potter, really, it's funny. I was just talking about this with a friend, how she and I had the exact same experience where I was so into reading growing up that I actually sort of resisted Harry Potter for a little while, because to me it was the book that kids who didn't read read.
Oh.
And I was like, ugh. I was just like, okay, whatever. You guys are all you do is read Harry Potter and you think you're reading so much.
You're posers.
And I had a school librarian.
Yeah, just because the books are 900 pages long, you think you're reading a lot.
Well, most of the ones at that time were not, But finally, I had a school librarian that kept being like, please, I'm begging you, you would love the Harry Potter books. And finally, there was a Scholastic book fair. And I bought a set of books 5 and 6 and then started with book 5. Very normal.
Oh.
And which is so funny. My friend who I was talking about this with actually started with book 3. So, yeah, and then I was hooked immediately. And I still actually get really reading the opening of book 5 is really very nostalgic for me in a way that I imagine reading the opening of book 1 is for other people.
That's really funny. I'm
That's wild.
Shocked that you got hooked on book 5 as your first book. I feel like I'd just be confused and upset and I don't know. It's
right, you open with Harry angsting about this kid who died, and you're like, wow, I am hooked with this fantasy series.
Yeah, I feel like this gives us a sense of your personality immediately.
Oh no, I was thinking about it. I was I think I really had one. I literally stopped doing this after Harry Potter, but at the time I would read any book out of order because I read very early, and I was reading a lot of chapter books completely out of order from my library. Especially Animorphs, which I have a chip on my shoulder about because nobody likes Animorphs, but I would read Animorphs out of order, and that is fine. They're designed for that, and even the early Harry Potter books are also designed for that. But by the time I think 4 and on is really where it's you really need to start from the beginning. But there are so many. I think my brain likes to wonder. My brain likes to try to figure out what's going on, and so it created a bunch of unintentional, insane mysteries that are very easily solvable.
That's so funny. Okay, now I'm just imagining that you were making big assumptions about what happened in the earlier books, and then you read them, and you're wait a second, what?
Well, there is always. I have ranked before. What I think the worst or best to worst intro chapters of Harry Potter, because they always have Harry looks around at his room and he thinks that that drawing of an owl really reminds me of when Hagrid gave me my owl, Hedwig.
Yeah.
So yeah,
but it's funny because the 5th book has none of that, really. It's just
yeah, the 5th book is the first one without an intro.
so you
it still
really
has a little bit, but it is not. It's 4's intro is so painful. I think somebody was finally we're moving on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, wait. How old were you when you read the 5th book? for the first time?
I was 9, so 6 had just come out.
Okay,
And I don't have those copies anymore. I really read like almost everything from the library at that time, but I still have my copy of the poster. It's on my wall, like on my living room wall, that I got at the Scholastic Book Fair for 6.
Wow. I'm just imagining you as like a very angsty 9-year-old. You're just like started the 5th book and you're like, I immediately relate. Like
I like it so hard. Yeah. And the 5th is actually my second least favorite Harry Potter book, but I at the same time, there are a lot of parts of it that I feel very like that I think are some of the best of the series. So, yeah. And I read 5 and 6 and then I like, really the rest of the series, I have no memories basically of 1 through 4 of like discovering anything, which is why I stopped doing that for other book series.
Yeah. I had a similar thing because my favorite book series as a kid was the Oz books. And pretty much after the first like 2 or 3, like you can completely read them out of order. You're like, oh wow, the Wizard's in Oz. He wasn't last time I checked. And then you just sort of keep going. And so I assumed that's what fantasy books were like. And then I saw the first Harry Potter movie, and then obviously I couldn't get the second book out of the library because everyone and their mother had. So I saw the first movie, and then I read 3 and 4. And I didn't feel like I missed much. Like, I think in Prisoner, there's a line early on of like, Ginny had been very taken with Harry ever since he saved her life last year. And I was like, oh, that seems like a thing that would happen.
And did that like spoil you for when you first read the second book, that you were like, you already knew Ginny was gonna...
Like, I knew Ginny was gonna live, but other than that, like, I didn't know the why or the how.
Yeah, you didn't know that she was the one opening the Chamber of Secrets or anything, yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, yeah, like, Ron's sister being in danger seems like a thing that would happen.
Yeah.
And then after that, I, like, learned to read books in order.
That's funny. That's really funny.
Also, Lillian, I found this out about you about 2 hours ago. You're a wizard rocker?
Oh, yes. I wouldn't say I'm like one of great acclaim in any way, but I do have a wizard rock band called, it's a band, but it's me, called Hope and the Howlers, which I am, I'm learning guitar right now, and I am excited though because I'm working on a project right now with fellow wizard rocker Bisexual Harry, which is really exciting. And then I'm always working on a million things across different like media, but like I'm getting, I feel confident enough in guitar right now that some songs are like really coming together. So it's exciting.
Oh, fun.
Fantastic.
Yes. But I was on this most recent Wizard Rock sampler. Dream Quaffle was kind enough to open the sampler with my track, and then and the Wizard Rock cover swap recently. I did actually Dream Quaffle's song, and I was pretty happy with how that turned out. Yeah.
I mean, you're an excellent opening act. I know that from organizing MalfoyCon when you were the first presentation, and you did great first thing in the morning.
Well, thank you. I mean, it was very, it was very motivating. It was very kind of you to have like, you had a notebook, and I was like, well, now I've got somebody who's paying attention. So everyone was, of course, but if somebody's out there taking notes, it's like, well, you have to do your best.
Mm-hmm.
It does make you feel like, very like, ooh, look at me. People are taking notes on what I have to say. Yeah.
Yeah, be like, oh, I should say something worthwhile if they're going to write this down.
Exactly.
All right. So today, for episode number 80, we've gathered to discuss love in the Harry Potter series. And this is coming out on Valentine's Day, so we hope you enjoy the theming. We don't have any recommended reading today, so it's just, relax, enjoy your holiday, your time off from school and homework.
And we want to give a huge thanks to our new patron, Luke Smitherman, over on our Patreon, who bought us this round of drinks at the pub. So woohoo! Thank you so much, Luke. We so appreciate it. Listeners, if you'd like to buy us a round at the pub, head on over to patreon.com/3broomsticks with the numeral 3 to sign up. We have lots of bonus content for you over there. Sophia and I, last month, had a trip down to Universal where we explored Epic Universe with the new Harry Potter world and the new Harry Potter ride. And of course, we also, went to the old Universal, took the Hogwarts Express. So we're going to be talking a lot about that over on our Patreon.
Yes.
And Sophia, I believe you also have a special treat for our patrons this month.
Yes. All right, we are in February, the end of February. We have the second task of the Triwizard Tournament on February 24th. So this is a big joke in the fandom that the second task is really boring to watch. And it does sound really boring to watch. However, I know several men who watch hours of people just commentating about sports that they aren't currently watching and just seem to enjoy that. So...
do you really?
I do. I do know people who do this.
That is baffling to me.
I know. So I was like, well, if they can do it, why can't I? So, as part of our Patreon push, since there's just a couple weeks left until February 24th, I'm not going to push our goal too high, but let's say if we get 5 new patrons in the month of February, I am going to release a very special episode, an hour-long episode, where I pretend to be Ludo Bagman, commentating on the second task. So I am going to see whether I can fill an hour of time with theoretically interesting things to say about the second task. So about, I don't know, the lake, about mermaids, about Grindylows. Just, We'll see. We'll see.
I mean, I really, really want this to be a thing that exists in the world.
Yes.
So I really hope we get there.
So please, if this sounds fun to you, please join our Patreon this month. I think it will be a very fun time to see what I can come up with to fill that hour.
Yes, I think so. So listeners, you heard it. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to that one person you're, chatting with online. Tell them to join our Patreon. We'd really appreciate your help in keeping the lights on at the 3 Broomsticks, because the electricity bill is getting high over here. So we can, keep talking about Harry Potter for a long time to come.
Yeah.
And I think with that, I am going to sign off because I am a Grinch when it comes to Valentine's Day, and leave you with your regularly scheduled hosts for the episode, Taavi and Sierra.
Thank you for coming in, Irvin. Appreciate it.
Always happy to help. Listeners, have a good time. Everyone have a good time, and I look forward to listening to the episode. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Bye, Irvin. All right. We're now going to offer a toast to the comments on episode 77. This episode was our signature moments of the main 7 characters. This was our all-host episode. It was a very fun time. And we raise our glass to commenter Louise Freeman, who said, "I'm not sure if it's a signature moment or not, but I would argue Ginny's transformation began in Goblet of Fire, when Ron suggested she go to the ball with Harry, and she declined because she had already agreed to go with Neville. No one would have blamed her for dumping Neville to go with her longtime crush, probably not even Neville. I think the integrity and maturity she showed then set her up for later development." And I thought that was really beautiful. I think we don't know enough about Ginny pre-Goblet of Fire to know if she was always like that or not. But I do agree that it's a real sign of who she is as a person. She's always sort of sticking up for Luna when she's getting bullied, sticking up for Neville when he's getting bullied. And I do think that, it is a real sign of her integrity that she goes with Neville even after being offered the chance to go with Harry.
I think it's a really good take, and I definitely agree with that. For sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think to me it is a good signature moment. It does really encapsulate Ginny's personality. And honestly, I also agree on the idea that probably Neville wouldn't even blame her. If she had gone to Neville. I mean, and that maybe just speaks to his complete lack of his lack of maybe self-respect or confidence, maybe is a better way of saying it than self-respect. But yeah, lack of confidence, that he would probably be like, yeah, I mean, of course he'd rather go with Harry. We all know you've had a crush on Harry for forever. You know, I don't think he would be mad. And it's not like he had a crush on Ginny. He just wanted to have a partner.
Yeah. And I think that they each know that they're a good person. And so that also helps with them both wanting the best for each other, but then also, you know, that's why they go with each other in the first place, especially because otherwise Ginny wouldn't be able to go because she wasn't old enough. So,
right.
You know, I think Neville is both like, hey, you should come with me because then you can go. And then also because who else is going to go with me? So I might as well have someone to go with. And so it's kind of like a good matchup for those reasons. And then,
yeah,
but I think also Neville is just more necessarily more of a good person. And so he would just want Ginny to have a good time.
I think he would.
So I don't know that it's necessarily like, oh, he doesn't have enough self-worth for it. But I think, in my opinion, it's a little bit more of, he's just such a nice guy that he would be like, oh no, that's okay. That's okay. I'll figure something else out. But that would have been sad because then he'd probably end up alone.
Yeah. I do think Neville in Goblet of Fire was at a stage where he would be sort of I understand because nobody would want, nobody ever would ever want to go with me anyway. So of course you don't want to go with me. I think there would be some him being down on himself, definitely. But also I think he would be happy for Ginny. So to me, it really shows Ginny doesn't want to embarrass Neville by saying yes and then saying no. And also is doesn't want Neville to be the sort of laughing stock of his year of everyone else gets a partner but Neville. I think it's really she is really looking out for him, and we don't even get the sense they know each other that well, but she is just yeah, I don't want Neville to be laughed at for me jilting him.
Yeah, I'd agree
100%.
So this is a nice segue to our main discussion about love, and I was inspired to do this episode by a favorite podcast of mine, which is called Hot and Bothered, and we can link to that in the show notes if anyone's interested. But they analyze romance novels and rom-coms, and in the last season or two, it's been specifically movies and rom-coms, and they've been looking at these movies through the questions of, what does this movie believe about love? And then also, what does this movie not know it believes about love? So they sort of define that as the text and the subtext of the movie. So messages it knows it's sending and some of the messages it doesn't know it's sending, but that people are picking up on anyway. And I was thinking that we could look at this for each type of love that we see in the series. So starting out with romantic love. What does the series believe about romantic love? And one of the things that I noticed is that there's an idea that you should be friends with your partner first. So I think some of the big love stories that we see, especially Ron and Hermione, friends for years, Harry and Ginny don't get together until they've sort of developed a friendship. Lupin and Tonks are friends as part of the Order. So in general, there's this sort of, that friendship comes first, and then romance follows. And I don't know, what do you guys think about that? Can you think of other examples when that isn't the case, or, because most of the things I could think of at least long-term partners that we know about, there's a level of friendship. Maybe not Bill and Fleur. That might be the only one that I can think of.
We're coworkers, I guess. He's teaching her English, which is already kind of a very romantically charged sort of setup there.
Yeah.
I don't know that we have. I mean, we don't really know how close Lupin or Tonks were as friends. Like, because with Ron and Hermione and the Harry and Ginny, it is like years of buildup. And part of the reason I feel like Lavender and Ron don't work is that, like, we have, like, years of him mostly pretending or forgetting that she exists and then occasionally making fun of her or making lewd jokes about planets. You know, they have no chemistry, which is the point. But I think that generally the series agrees. I don't know that, you know, Molly and Arthur, we don't really have a lot of backstory on before they met. So I do think that the huge front and center characters, Ron and Hermione and Harry and Ginny, are definitely endorsements of that.
Yeah. And Lupin and Tonks, I based off of not actually what was in the series, but what I remembered, and to be honest, it's been a really long time since I read this, so if someone remembers it better, but the Pottermore extra content about Lupin that sort of talked about them kind of getting to know each other through the order and stuff like that, which gave me the sense of them having a friendship / co-working type, you know, relationship that causes them to fall in love. But yeah, we don't have as much within the series itself. Yeah.
My thought with that is I just I really hesitate to treat Pottermore, and I mean, I love many Pottermore entries. Like, I tend to use them for my own personal interpretation of the books anyway, but I have this, you know, issue. I forgot to talk about all of this about myself in the intro, but one of the things I'm most interested in is that I'm really interested in fan studies and, like, the way that we interpret and receive the text and what we consider the text and why we consider certain things the text. And, you know, I think that I try to remember what, like, the largest audience of Harry Potter readers are going to be considering, and it's, you know, it's the books. I mean, a lot of them,
yeah,
not even all of the books, or, you know, some of the movies, some of the books, a combination of both. But so yeah, I usually, unless I say otherwise, I'm usually personally considering the 7 books themselves.
And I'd say on the podcast, like, we don't have an exact, you know, these things are exactly canon, these things aren't. I'd say in general, we usually focus on the books, but then also I think we do always bring in, if there are sort of interviews or Pottermore things that could add to this discussion, but I think all of us have different opinions on how much those mean, you know?
Yeah.
So they come into the discussion, but not everyone has the same feelings about, like, is that real like, is that, like, you know, that is something that the author has said about these characters in the book, but then we are sort of then interpreting whether that fits with our ideas. Yeah.
Exactly. I think it's also like an evaluation of, is this a convenient add-on or is it world building? Because there is a bit of both in the whole Harry Potter verse, I feel.
Yeah, and I feel like for me personally, it's sort of does this personally, to me, it's very personal with those things. It's like, does this personally feel like something that adds to my emotional understanding of the book? My, like, that sort of feels right to me, or does it not feel right to me? And yeah, it's a very personal process of deciding that.
Same for me. And I love that, you know, having you said that it's some of it's adding on and some of it's not, because that's, like, exactly determining when and how and, you know, what is the feeling behind what's tacked on is, like, something I'm very passionate about being able to put words to. So
yeah,
it's also often directly contradictory information.
Yep.
In many cases, it's like, yes, these two things. Oh, yeah, they are saying the opposite thing. This is good.
Yeah.
Makes it very easy to interpret.
Yes.
Back to the friends point, another couple that we don't see very much as, we don't really see at all as a couple, but is George and Angelina, also friends for many, many years first. So yeah, but honestly, we don't see that many, like, romantic partners up close and personal.
I think that, you know, we don't get too much of seeing those, partially just because it's, you know, geared for a little bit younger, but also because it really, to your original point of know your partner first, we're really focused on all of the groundwork that they're doing for what will eventually become these romantic relationships. We are focused on the friendship or the working relationship or the teammate relationship and things like that. And so we see them. And then when it goes, and then they became a couple and then they got married, you go, okay, that makes sense because you've seen everything that's been built up.
Totally.
And I think the only one that we don't see that definitely comes out of nowhere is Bill and Fleur, who you just, you meet Bill, you meet Fleur, and then suddenly they're together. But it does make sense as well, because on that side, you get to see a little bit of them as a couple and then kind of retroactively add in what that history must have looked like.
Yeah, we just get, and it's interesting, we just get one moment before we see them as a couple where, like, right before the third task, Fleur is just, like, eyeing Bill and is like, oh, okay. And Harry is like, yeah, he could tell that Fleur, like, didn't mind, like, long hair or earrings or whatever. So, like, clearly it's more of, like, a physical attraction first, which we see less with the other, romantic partners. And like when we do see it, it tends to be, and this goes to one of the other points, it tends to be more of like a not very serious, it's not so much love as an infatuation. So with, Ron and Lavender, it's very much based on the physical. With even just like Harry and Cho, like Harry has basically never talked to Cho before, but finds her really cute. And they go on one date and it's disastrous. And like,
but she's a good Quidditch player.
She's a good Quidditch player. Like, I'm not saying there's no, there's some chemistry there, but like, they've never really had a conversation. And yeah, like Bill and Fleur is maybe the one romantic relationship we see that's sort of just based off of one, they both thought the other one was attractive and then they started dating and it worked out, But I feel like in general in the series, there is an emphasis on like physical looks are not the main thing you should choose a partner based off of. And I think it's like kind of fairly explicitly in there. Like one part I'm thinking of is like the Vila, like they are all beautiful, but they then like during the course of the Quidditch World Cup, you see they're sort of like, they suddenly are like, throwing fireballs and like are like look like, evil bird like creatures or whatever. And then Mr. Weasley says, and that, boys, is why you should never go off of looks alone. And so it's very explicitly like people can look beautiful and not be very nice.
Plus a really healthy message about like men's complete inability to resist a physical attraction. So
yeah.
No,
And Lillian, I think you were thinking about Hermione and Lockhart as part of that too.
Yes, I was thinking. I was running through my head about infatuation, and I think that the earliest sign we see of probably crushes between any of the characters is Hermione in Chamber of Secrets when she's like doodling Lockhart's name with hearts and everything, which is so. It's not unlike her, because it is a thing she's doing as a young girl, but it seems unlike her because she's, it's quote unquote silly. It's like silly little girl stuff about having a crush on an older teacher and thinking he's so dreamy, which is something that for once she has in common with other girls. It's like actually very popular. He's very popular as a teacher, but it like overcomes her sense and her reason. And everyone treats her, people do treat the female characters who like love like Lockhart that way as silly, whether they're 12 or they're Molly. So
yeah, no, I think that's true. That there's this sort of that being infatuated with someone makes you blind to their real personality. And I think we see that with like Merope and Tom Riddle Sr.
Yeah.
That he's not a nice guy. Like, we get no evidence at any point that there's anything nice about this guy, but he's very attractive, and that is really what draws her in. And she like sort of is infatuated, believes herself to be in love with him, but it's not really based off of anything real. And even with Tom Riddle Jr., Voldemort, like we see like him with Hepzibah Smith, and like she is all, you know, overlooking the ways that he is using her because she likes having an attractive man, you know, doting on her. So yeah, we definitely see that sort of, it's very explicit. It's like often the most attractive people in the series are the least nice people.
But also at the same time, there is a lot of describing the evil characters as rather ugly. If we look at a certain Miss Dolores Umbridge, or a lot of other characters, a lot of the Slytherins are described as rather unappealing.
Yeah, I think, there's some of both, which is kind of interesting. We don't really have any, like, just middle-of-the-road kind of characters who are evil.
You can really see it in, like, I know that this is not necessarily about love, although I was thinking about this character about love, but, like, Slughorn is one of my all-time favorite characters. I think he's the most interesting Slytherin in the series, because he so embodies a lot of Slytherin traits, but is actually the only one, like, that is explored to a satisfactory and, like, good. He's a good guy. He's got a good conclusion, but Slughorn is, like, both good and bad, and his physical description is tied to, and his own choices about the food that he eats are tied to his, you know, his obesity, and then his obesity is tied to his infantilism, like infantilizing him, and like making him out to be, you know, all his negative traits, because he has so much both. You can directly tie all of his negative traits to his weight and his life choices regarding that, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. That is really interesting. Yeah, it's sort of, and this is, I guess, a bit different than love, but it's like, in the Harry Potter books, it's not that someone's physical appearance tells you nothing about them. It's sort of the messages, it tells you something about them, but like, it's not always exactly what you think, especially when someone is more attractive. Like, I feel like when they're more attractive, it's like often it tells you that they're not very nice. Like, you know, it's just like it tells you something, but it's not a very clear message of what it tells you exactly.
Yeah, if you notice their appearance, there's a problem. Like, if you're not just like, that's a person. Like,
right, yes.
And with Slughorn, there is a love. It's overindulgence of food. He loves, you know, Slughorn is almost asexual, essentially. Like, he kind of just doesn't seem to have any romantic or sexual interest at all, except for food, except for, you know, physical pleasure, like hedonism. So his love is items, and that is reflected poorly on him.
I think it is interesting. His version of love is very much based in you know, perks, basically, of these connections. Like, he doesn't necessarily love his students and love the people that he surrounds himself with, but he loves what they can give him and what he can kind of get out of those relationships, because he does like all those, you know, little delights, and not just the food, but also the tickets and the fame of having taught these people. And he is, you know, a collector of basically love for items and things. It's very materialistic instead of any sort of he doesn't even really show a friendship love with Dumbledore or anything like that. You know, he's very much just, I'm not going to do this for you. Oh wait, I can collect somebody else. So, you know, that's what he really cares about, which is interesting. And I think there's a couple other characters that we can see have a little bit more of that focus. You know, obviously with Voldemort, he doesn't necessarily love, but he is, again, a collector of items and of fame and of people who he surrounds himself with. And so it is very interesting. There's also this, like, again, emphasis on love is very powerful, but it's also just love of the right things, because if you just have a love for objects or power or something like that, it's not going to get you very far.
You know, I think it's interesting. I think that's really interesting. I do think that Slughorn, loves at least some of his students. Like, I think we are meant to believe that he loves Lily, like that he was genuinely upset about Lily's death, that he genuinely cared about her.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting to think about how does he show love? And this is something I actually wanted to talk about later on, so maybe we can save the bulk of this conversation for later when I wanted to talk about like Dumbledore and Harry. But what is like the sort of, you can love someone and not be very good at loving them, like showing love, like the feeling of love versus the action of love. And I think we definitely see that with Slughorn, where he does care about his students, but when it requires personal sacrifice to show that love, then he's not very good at that, because he does prioritize these physical comforts over some of the more sort of moral ideals.
Or his personal safety in this case.
Or his personal safety. And like, okay, two thoughts on that. One, I think that if you think about sort of, you know, how does he show love? One of the big ways he shows love is through these perks, like you were saying. It's not just like what he receives, but what he gives. His way of giving and showing love is through giving people connections, showing them favoritism, bringing them to these like nice, meals and whatever. And like, that is a genuine way of, showing love and affection. But there are moments when it's lacking if it's the only way you show love and affection. And especially in this moments where you need that sort of moral courage, like it is a lot. It's like what he has to offer in terms of loving is lacking in those moments.
But we also do see him go into the Battle of Hogwarts and join the fight there. So he does actually make that step when it comes down to it. He's just, when he's alone, fleeing, he's also actively taking the step to not reach out and put anyone in danger. Yeah.
So, I'd say it's sort of when push comes to shove, like, he'll do it. But he doesn't want to. Like, even at the very beginning of the Battle of Hogwarts, he's sort of like, are we really going to fight Voldemort? Because, we're not going to keep him out forever. And Professor McGonagall is like, yeah, who cares? We're going to fight him anyway. So it's clearly, it takes a lot to push him to that point, but he will make the right decision when he's pushed.
And something that, not only is he on the run from Death Eaters when we meet him, but he's been on the run from Death Eaters to tremendous personal cost and like inconvenience for over a year. Like he sort of brushes it aside, but he really is not. No, he's not going to risk himself unnecessarily, but he is not willing to join the Death Eaters. That is clearly is a hard line that he's drawing.
Yeah. And this actually, okay.
I'm sorry, it's totally...
we're just on a tangent, but I'm just going to finish the tangent since we're here. I think this is a big mark of Slytherin's, is this sort of... and I want to say this in a completely, like, judgment-free way, which is that Slytherins tend to prioritize their own safety and comfort over some of these like larger ideals, and like that. And I don't think that is actually I don't think that is like an objectively bad thing. I think that if you are a Slytherin living during a time of peace and where you are not being pushed to make these sorts of decisions, like, that is fine. Like, everyone has different values and like ways of prioritizing those values. So if you're a Slytherin living during a time of peace and you're like, yeah, I really care about my own personal comfort. Like, I actually don't, like, personally, like, I don't know what is intended in the writing of Slughorn, but I don't find there to be inherent judgment in Slughorn's love of comfort and food. There are like quotes about his physical appearance and tied to like the way that he is obese that are so directly comparable to, but of course it's not all like directly in my head. But anyway, sorry to interrupt. I get what you're saying there. Like, and I'm not saying, I guess, okay, divorcing it from intention, like how it was written, how it was, the intention of how it was written, the way I read it, I don't feel that I don't feel an inherent judgment towards that. As in, me as a reader, I don't judge that. And I don't think I'm being forced to judge that through how it's written. But that's a little bit different. But I think the judgment comes from, like, we are at a time of war where you have to make hard decisions and you have to decide whether to prioritize these, like, larger moral values versus your own safety and comfort. And that the judgment comes from, like, if you don't prioritize the larger moral questions, then you are sort of perpetuating these, like, you are allowing these evil things to continue or making it easier for evil things to continue. So, like, I think it's an interesting thing where, like, on his own, I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. It's more sort of in the situation. And, okay, bringing it back to the question of love, like, during a time of peace, the way Horace Slughorn loves his students seems perfectly, like, that's enough. That's all he really needs to do. But during a time of war, it can feel like not enough.
Yeah, my Gryffindor thought is if I still my very Gryffindor opinion is if if you're like that during a time of peace, it's still not a moral position that I'm interested in, even because a time of war could be at any time, which is of course why I'm a Gryffindor.
Yeah, and this is why I'm a Hufflepuff, because I'm like, I accept everyone. Everyone's different. Okay. All right, we'll try to bring it back to romantic love. We'll see. A couple of other things. Okay, talking about war. Yes, segues. We're doing this all intentionally. Okay. One of the messages we get about romantic love is that pursuing love is worth it even in the midst of war. We have that pretty explicitly with Lupin and Tonks at the end of the 6th book, where McGonagall basically says, like, Dumbledore would still want you to, Dumbledore would be happy to know that, like, people are still, loving and, getting married and all of these, like, that this is still important. I think it's kind of interesting, though, because there's a bit of a contradictory message where it's like, with Harry and Ginny, it's like, it's too risky for him to pursue love. Mm-hmm. But with Lupin and Tonks, it's like, you should ignore the risk and do it anyway. And I'm curious what you guys think about that.
I think that it's just because it's two completely different situations. Like, Lupin and Tonks are basically just soldiers, but Harry is like a general. So Harry is the one who's going out and is actively like a lynch point in this war. And he knows that, obviously all of the Order are going to be, they're going to try to attack all of the Order at some point. But Lupin and Tonks are under the same amount of danger. And whereas Harry is under a lot more danger, and therefore, right, if anybody found out that, Harry is under so much danger that Hermione and Ron, just by being closely associated with him, are under heightened amounts of danger. And therefore, if Ginny was also found to be directly associated with him, or found out to be his girlfriend, his fiance, whatever the case may be, she would be a higher priority target for the Death Eaters. And so I think that it makes sense because Lupin and Tonks are both on an everyday basis, assuming essentially an equal amount of risk just by being a part of this war. Whereas Harry, by associating more closely with Ginny, would put her under a higher amount of risk than she currently is if she's just one of the Weasleys or one of the Order. And so I think it makes sense in this situation why he would want to at least attempt to not make her a big, obvious target. So I think that that's just the difference. Also because Lupin and Tonks are working from Order headquarters and are more closely together physically, whereas Harry is going off and won't see Ginny. So
well,
who knows what would happen while they're apart.
Lupin is not at the same, Lupin as a character is in a very different situation as a werewolf than any other Order member because he is so visibly a target that he leaves Harry's birthday party early because he doesn't want to be seen for any period of time by Scrimgeour, with the others because it is making them a target. So, textually, like, he is at higher risk, and that is actually his main point. The thrust of when he's trying to leave Tonks in 5-7 is that he's like, I make her life worse by being in it. She is a higher target because of my presence, and she is seen as the woman marrying a werewolf. And, we don't know what, like, a child of a werewolf will be, but we will know that they will be loathed. Like, and the thing about that is, like, Harry's responses are completely understandable textually, but Remus is correct. Like, like Remus is like, we don't know what's going to happen, and also I am loathed by all of society. Like, and he is.
Yeah.
So textually, like, on that level, there is like he has a really valid reason for being like, this is like not safe for her. And then, like, he is also right because they both die. And also, another thing is, I wasn't sure if I wanted to. I originally actually had like a purple point, a point of my own up here, but I had moved it around a little bit because I wasn't sure if I wanted to talk about it now. But, like, I am somebody who, like, when I think about the books, I think about them both in text and out of text, sort of Watsonian versus Doyleist perspective for people who think of it that way, which is, of course, like, Watson in Sherlock Holmes is in the text. He can only think of it from inside the text. And then Doyle, Arthur Conan Doyle, writes Sherlock Holmes and is the writer who's behind the whole thing. And I know that, like, for a lot of people, it is kind of sacrosanct to stay inside the text. People just really, like, the idea of bringing in the author is but we're inside the text. We're not thinking of it that way. But a lot of times with a text that has flaws, like, they are not even necessarily flaws. It's just, it is created by a real person. A lot of times that's every text ever made. But like, unless, you're counting AI, which I don't, but like, everything is made by a real person or a series of people. And so, like, there are some things where the answer really is, like, it's contradictory, as as we were saying, like, it's contradictory. The author had motivations. Like, that doesn't mean we need to carry those motivations. Like, but, like, talking about them and understanding is something I'm really interested in. And, like, Watsonian, I don't think of it as Doyleism. Like, that's kind of a newer term for me. I just kind of think of it as, like, new historicism, which is kind of the academic term for it, versus, like, post-structuralism, which is incorporating, like, all of, like, that's Pottermore, or just, like, Death of the Author were only inside the text. But anyway, I'm sorry for that tangent, but it's related to me here because there are different motivations. The author is having different motivations for what she is trying to convey with Harry than what she is trying to convey with Lupin and Tonks. Like that to me is the root of this, and that, like, the contradiction is rooted in two different motivations for writing.
But I guess I'm curious, is it actually a contradiction in that Harry's way of doing things textually is the better way to do it? So, like, going off of what you said, okay, so first of what Sierra said, I do get what you're saying about, like, okay, Harry is, like, okay, kind of the general. I mean, he's not, like, telling other people what to do in quite that way, but he is the figurehead. Like, he is like, his life is seen as sort of the most important life. And yes, like, Ginny, if Voldemort knew that he was with Ginny, like, that he could use Ginny to get to Harry, and that would put the whole mission at risk. So, like, I do think it is a bit different, but I would say, like, on Lillian's point, Lupin is just objectively putting Tonks at a huge amount of risk by marrying her. We see at the very beginning of Deathly Hallows that Voldemort tells Bellatrix, like, your family member just married a werewolf, you have to, like, kill her.
And she does.
And she does. So, like, I think it's really interesting because if you look at what's literally written in the text, it's like, McGonagall is saying, like, everyone is telling Lupin you should marry Tonks. And, like, being like, you know, it doesn't matter that it's a time of war, like, you know, love is what matters, like, Dumbledore would be happy for you to get married, like, she's willing to take the risk, you know, she doesn't care about any of these things, and that's, like, what's actually written, but then if you look at what happens as a result of it, you're like, well, Lupin was right the whole time, like, why...
I think that's such an interesting point. And it's so hard to talk about what the series believes and then what we receive, right? Like the difference between the text and the subtext, because that's why I was struggling with where to put this. But I was like, really just had a moment of like, oh my God, is that the point? And then I'm thinking, but Harry, despite the fact that Harry is like, Ginny, you can't come with me. Harry is like, Remus, you have to go back to Tonks. You're making the wrong choice, which is
and
like...
I think that is nothing to do with his romantic relationship with Tonks and everything to do with him being a dad. And I think actually, let's maybe save that for when we talk about parental love later. But I think it's completely like, he's like, you can't leave your kid. Like, I think that he would not necessarily have the same reaction to if there was no kid involved.
I completely agree, yeah. For sure.
I think that's completely fair, and I think that I think that the point that we will talk about later is very true. But I also think that having the result, you know, what we're saying about what the result is versus like why Harry is doing it, the result is still saying it's another character confirming the narrative of, you know, Minerva and all these people being like, no, you two should be together. And then, you know, because Remus, of course, goes on Potter Watch and says, you know, Harry's instincts are true and nearly always right. Like, and it's like, well, okay. But it leads you both to your death, you know?
And I think maybe the message is like, they are two adults who they're like, okay, and they're more adult, like, okay, Harry is technically in the wizarding world an adult in the 7th book, but like, is he? No, not really. They are adults. They are two adults who have willingly joined the Order of the Phoenix, knowing that they very likely might die. And I think that perhaps in that hospital wing scene, we have a bunch of adults who are like, yeah, we might all die for this. We know that. We've decided that. So if we're already potentially going to die, like, you might as well have some time with the person you love. And I wonder if it's just like all of the adults who are joining the Order of the Phoenix, and they're kind of like, our time is short. We don't know exactly how long it is, but we might as well pursue love. And for Harry, it's like, he is young. Ginny is not an adult. Like, he is barely an adult. And she is not part of the Order of the Phoenix. It's not like she is necessarily at risk. Or at least not at, like, that level of risk. It might just be a different kind of decision-making where he's sort of like, there's no reason that Ginny has to be at risk at this moment. And, like, maybe we can all get out of this alive. Or maybe at least she can get out of this alive. And, like, I don't know. I wonder if it's just, like, maybe it's just showing the fact that different people are going to make different decisions here because it's a complicated situation. However, I do think that we are shown that Lupin is kind of pushed into this decision and regrets it. And I personally think he has every right to regret it. Like, it's very reasonable that he regrets it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the narrative is so complicated by the fact that there's there is not a scene where Remus is happy to be with Tonks. Like there are scenes where he is like saying that he's happy to be with Tonks or that he is like invested in this relationship. But there is not one scene. There are scenes where Tonks is happy and Remus is miserable. And we have all sorts of different reasons for that, of course. And also, like, the circumstances are Voldemort has risen to power and the Ministry has fallen. But, like, you know, in every moment where he could be happy, he is not. Even in the moment where they are holding hands at Dumbledore's funeral, she is implied to be happy, and there's no description of him.
Yeah, and I will say, I think that, and this might be sort of more, this is not like explicitly written in here, but I think that I read this as Lupin actually understands the situation a lot better than most of the other people in that room. And like they don't, because he has been living as a werewolf for so long, he knows what danger this is going to cause. And the other people there are kind of oblivious to it. So they're kind of like, yeah, like, okay, you're just like being hard on yourself. But he knows how big of a risk this is. And he kind of lets other people who don't understand the risk convince him that the risk isn't that big.
I kind of agree with this reading as well, that it's also because he's one of the few people that is in the Order, and this time around, that was very active in the Order and in the Resistance the first time.
Yeah.
Most people, the Weasleys, etc., are new. Either they were too young, or they just didn't have
the connections or
the guts or the connections to fight back the first time. Like the Weasleys weren't involved in the first Wizarding War in this way. They were, of course,
except Molly's brothers were, but not her personally. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
You know, it won't be like, it's not like last time, Molly. That, you know, they aren't picking us off like flies, as he says to her in Order of the Phoenix. They won't be.
For me, I think that the way Remus is looking at it is that picture that I think it was Sirius gave to Harry of the First Order.
Mad Eye in the books.
Where almost everyone is dead. And he might be in the position where I most likely would be as well, is that I don't know if she is going to make it or if I'm going to make it, but the chances of us both making it are next to none. One of us is going to die here.
Yeah.
I think that might be depressing, but I think that might be where he's at.
Yeah. And to be honest, like, this wouldn't be the first time that there is a certain, an irony written in that is not explicit. You don't even necessarily pick it up on the first however many times you read it, or ever, to be honest. But, okay, the example I want to give is when Mrs. Weasley, and we talked about this on the episode, the Strike crossover episode about book 5 and book 7 parallels in both Harry Potter and Strike. So in the scene where Mrs. Weasley is fighting the boggart, and that's her big fear, is that all of her loved ones are going to die. And there are, I'm just looking it up, there are 3 people in addition to Harry who walk into that room and help and try to help her sort of help her recover from that experience. And those people are Lupin, Sirius, and Mad Eye. And Lupin says, I just found the quote, Molly, that's enough. This isn't like last time. The Order is better prepared. We've got a head start. We know what Voldemort's up to. So they are all trying to reassure her. And I do not think it's a coincidence that the 3 people who come into that room in that moment are 3 people who die within the next few books.
It's interesting. I think it is some, has to be a coincidence, because I don't think that all of those characters had been decided to be killed yet.
You don't think so?
No, I would.
Which one do you think wouldn't have been killed?
I don't think Mad Eye is considered very consistently, and I think, I know Remus, by her quotes, I know Remus had not yet been decided to be killed. Of course, do we always believe her, or is she always is she occasionally contradictory, or often contradictory? But even without her quotes, one of the ways that I just really, my brain explores these books as I'm reading them is sort of the writing process. And I think that you can sort of, especially with the drafts that have been released, reconstruct a lot of her writing process. And the shifts in Remus's characters in 6 and 7 are just so fundamental and foundational that I don't think he had been envisioned to die yet. Also, Mad Eye is he is killed because he is functionally inconvenient.
Right.
He is he's too inconvenient to be allowed to survive. As though, So,
but I think she might have known that
Yeah, with Mad Eye, she would have.
I also think all of the Marauders were at least at some point in her planning. She might have wanted to spare Lupin, but I think at least at some point in her planning, she was planning to kill all the Marauders, because she also like kills them in reverse order, which seems very intentional. Sorry, as in reverse order, as in Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, Prongs.
Yes.
Prongs, Padfoot. You know, like it feels very intentional. I think they were all going to die.
Does it feel intentional because we think of them as Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, or does it feel intentional because it's intentional? Because the thing about, I mean, I have always, and I've yet to come to, I truly think that Remus was a late addition to the Marauders to begin with. Really? I don't think he was in the initial, he was obviously in the initial draft of Prisoner of Azkaban, but I think that there was a werewolf teacher, and then there was Sirius Blackhair's godfather, and that I think you can trace a lot of the strange, like, things about the Marauders that don't always make a whole ton of sense, or specifically lines of dialogue in Prisoner of Azkaban that don't make a whole lot of sense, to the idea that, like, why would McGonagall and Flitwick and Hagrid be reminiscing about Sirius, Peter, and James, but not the fourth member of the group when he's also teaching at Hogwarts that year? Well, if that was written without him in mind, as specifically a member of their friend group, you know, and we are talking conjecture and early drafts, of course, but, like, I think that he is not really considered, he is so clearly in teacher category that Harry, in the writing of these books, in 4 and 5 especially, that Harry doesn't even seek to have the relationship that would feel so natural to us as readers with him, because it's like, in his mind, Remus is a teacher. He's Lupin the teacher, not Lupin his parents' friend. And it's only in 6 and 7 that shifts. And it's like sort of almost like retroactively, like we're supposed to have believed that was happening the whole time.
Okay, I have lots of thoughts about this.
Yes.
However, we will get far off on a tangent. So, okay, we'll have to have you back for a Lupin episode, because I have a lot of thoughts, but pulling it back.
Maybe.
Okay, I guess, you know, I would summarize what I'm saying of, I personally think it's intentional, those people being the ones who die. Either way, whether it was intentionally written that in the first place, or if later she decided to do it, I don't know. But I think that it's very possible in my reading that she might have intended there to be this irony of sort of everyone reassuring Lupin, and it turns out that he's correct, just like everyone reassuring Molly, and the people who are reassuring her are the people who die. Like, I think that there could be some irony intentionally in there. But we shall move on.
I want to jump in with one thought here, and for me it's that it often feels that Rowling is a author of opportunity and convenience. And she's like, oh, look at that. And afterward be like, oh, that would be fun to do. Let's just add that. Let's make this happen. Like, they all did.
To me, that is, like, part of the writing process. Like, I like to write, and, like, that is, like, a part of the writing process that is totally valid, and, like, is, you get these moments where you're like, oh my god, past me was a genius. Like, past me planted these seeds that I didn't even know I was planting, and now I get to do something really cool with them, and, like, make it all flow. And, like, that is just, like, a cool part of the writing process. So to me, it's not at all like, oh, if she hadn't intentionally written it that way, but then decides to connect it in that way, then that means anything bad. It's just like, that's how you write. So I think it could be either way. But okay, final for my points about what does the series believe about romantic love is that we often stand in our own way of getting with the people we want to be with. So we see that with Ron's insecurities. We see that with Ginny's shyness. We see that with Lupin's, I don't know the right word. I said self-hatred, that feels a little harsh, but, like, Lupin's
apprehension, like he has this premonition of danger. He's like feeling very apprehensive of taking that risk.
Yeah, like, there's a fear and there's like, it's sort of a combination of both. And also, like, with Snape and his dark arts obsession. And so her characters have to kind of work for their happy endings. Like, they have to have some sort of character growth to get there, if they do get a happy ending at all, but they have to have some sort of character growth. So it's usually not so much like although we could argue with Lupin, which we already did, but in most cases it's not like an external thing that's getting in their way so much as an internal thing. And like, if you think about sort of romance novel tropes or whatever, like there are different types of, like there always has to be an obstacle, but sometimes it's like an external obstacle and sometimes it's an internal obstacle. And she definitely focuses more on the internal obstacles. So then subtext. What is subtext we receive about romantic love? Definitely like that relationships started in high school are long-term, healthy, they will last throughout your life. I think that is never like explicitly stated as a belief, but that is just something that you kind of are going to pick up from all of the relationships we see.
I think it's also that like there's a satisfaction of us seeing like the characters we saw in the books ending up together, whether or not that's realistic or not.
Totally.
Like, how would we react to Harry getting together with a first year? We've heard mentioned once. I think we would be up in arms about that.
Yeah. And I totally agree. Like, it makes sense from a writing perspective. Thinking more about just like, because I think part of the interesting thing about looking at like romance novels or things that have romance in them, for example, or love in them, is like, what are messages that we like, that often we kind of base what we think is normal off of things we see in media. So I think it's interesting that this is sort of in the wizarding world seen as like the most normal and healthy way for a relationship to start. Whereas sort of if we have more real world examples, it does happen, and there are lots of happy relationships that start that way, but also most relationships started in high school are not.
Don't make it.
Don't make it. Yeah. And that's not something we see represented so much.
I almost liken this to people going to college, and there's kind of like, I don't know if it's like a tradition or even a stigma or something, but of women going to college to get their MRS degree of like, I'm just going to go to find a husband. And that usually happens kind of in smaller colleges and things like that. I know that it used to be a thing where I went, that a lot of people were kind of like, are you actually here for school or are you just trying to find a husband? So I think that kind of in like more smaller communities, that does tend to be a thing, but you see it older, not before you're 17. And so I think it's almost a weird blend of, oh yes, you're going to find longevity in this relationship if you just latch on to someone really early, versus that's not really how it tends to work in real life. And I just think that maybe it's because the wizarding world is such a small community, especially in Britain, and everybody ends up going through Hogwarts anyway if they're in that area. And so it's almost like you don't really have an option and you better lock them down now, which is kind of a weird stance to have. But it is very interesting that this is kind of a subtextual message of, well, you better find your person while you're still in school.
I mean, so I grew up in a pretty small town, and I live in Stockholm, which is a much, much bigger city. And I think it's like a universal truth that the friends that I had that stayed in my hometown, which is 9,000 people, they're all married. They have a house, not an apartment, a house. And they have kids that are almost in their teens, which is way more than I have. And that seems like the universal thing, whereas none of my friends that live in Stockholm, some of them are married, but none of them have kids. And I think that it's partially because you know what's out there. You know what the options are. You've met everyone. Like, if there's 40 people at your age and 50 the year above and 50 the year below, and you've met everyone in a 5 or 6 year age range by the time you've made it through Hogwarts.
Right.
And then you've got all the family friends and things that, like,
yeah,
you know what's out there by the time you leave, or a couple years afterwards, and you might just be like, okay, yeah, the person that works for me best is so-and-so, and we're going to get married and have kids. And of course, like, you don't have to get together during Hogwarts, but, like, you kind of know who's available, and you've already done that process of elimination. Yeah. Like, Neville, like, he ends up with Luna, isn't it, right? Yeah. Oh, he doesn't,
no,
yeah.
he actually doesn't.
Luna
he ends up with Hannah Abbott.
With Scamander's grandson, right?
Rolf Scamander.
And, like,
yeah.
There's, like, there's only so many options available, and you kind of be like, you triangle and you find what, like, the person that fits you best. Like, I think that might be more what's happening rather than, like, let's get hitched in high school.
Right. It makes a lot of sense, yeah. But within the world. Mm-hmm.
It is also still both, though. You know, I mean, there's this is such a reflection. I mean, I think part of the reason the Harry Potter series was so big is that, like, we're accepting a couple of, extremist religious groups. Like, still most religious families would let their kids read the Harry Potter books because they show pretty heteronormative, like, traditional, quote unquote, patriarchal understandings of relationships at the end of the day. Like, you've got Molly and Arthur are positioned as the, like, archetype and best example of a loving family, and Arthur goes into literally the office, the magical office to work, and then Molly is the stay-at-home mom, and they replicate this, the values at the core of the series are not necessarily, like, traditionalist and patriarchal, but, like, the result is still replicating the patriarchal and, like, normative standards from the previous generation that they just weren't able to have because of evil.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of segues to one of the other things that I was noticing, which is, like, that, okay, let's say within the world, you don't have very many options. You kind of have to pick whoever was at Hogwarts with you, and you might as well pick them quickly because, like, yeah, you don't want them to choose someone else. But that what we see is, like, that these are long-lasting, that there's this idea of sort of, okay, sure, some of the crushes or infatuations, they fade, whatever, but that a sort of more real love will last forever. So we don't really hear about divorce, like, some side characters. Like, I think in Pottermore, like, we know that Celestina Warbeck has like 3 marriages or whatever. But, like, other than that, I don't think divorce is really mentioned within the series. So, yeah, there is an idea of sort of, yeah, you pick your person and then that love is going to last forever, which is not that realistic to the real world, but that is sort of what we get a sense of from the series. And, okay, divorce is one point of, for that argument, but also I think with, like, Snape, with Lily, we see that sort of, that once you're in love with someone, if it's like a real love, it will last throughout time. Like, it's gonna last, however many years, like 15, 16, 17 years, without any, like, contact with that person, without anything. Like, it just lasts. And I think that for most people in life, like, you can love someone and have it be something that is a more temporary thing. Like, it can be real love, but it doesn't mean it's going to last. Or you could love someone, but then you're separated from them for 15 years and you don't really love them anymore. Or, like, you love them a bit, like, but not in that same way. But that's not really something we see represented.
I mean, I guess I am maybe not as positive about the whole Snape and Lily thing, because I don't think he loves her. He's obsessed, and it's not real love. So I think that the fact that he hasn't given up on her, even though if he really loved her, he would have, because he's like, oh yeah, save her, not her son, not her husband, who she loves. Those people don't matter. I want her for me. I just need her, and doesn't care about her happiness or anything. That's not love. So I think that may be a little bit different than, yeah, your love will always continue, even stand the test of time and death and all of those things, because I don't know that he's a great example of actual love in this scenario, because I don't think that it's really love.
I think that...
Okay, yeah, you can go first, Lily.
Oh, sorry. I think I have a feeling we have similar thoughts, though. I mean, I don't know. It's just a feeling. Who knows? But, but like, I think that the narrative does complicate his feelings about Lily, like with, iconic as a Dumbledore fan and Snape not fan. When, Dumbledore's like, you disgust me, like, because of that, because of the way that Snape views her and doesn't see that her, like he thinks he loves her, but like he doesn't love what she values or value who she values. So what kind of love is that? But at the end of the day, the subtext, the narrative that we're given is of, like an incredible valorization and lionization of obsessive love, because like Harry apparently like is like, so, at 15, 10 years after he's processed all of this, named one of his sons after Severus Snape.
Right.
So apparently Harry is like, because I think you're totally right, though, that like the narrative complicates it, but it's like somehow the takeaway is like, but it's still fine because he gave his life.
I mean,
I actually have a pretty different reading on this.
Well, I have a feeling we have completely different readings on this.
yeah, we'll just edit that so it came first. And I think I am not this opinion is not very popular in the fandom, but this is my opinion. I agree that like how he acts about Lily at age 21 is pretty fucked up. But that I don't think that is necessarily an indication of what that love looks like for the rest of that time, because like 17 years, or I guess 16 years, that's a really long time. And I actually don't see it as obsessive love. I think I actually, like, I was even hesitant to put this in the romantic love section because I don't even see it as romantic love quite by the time that we get to year 16 or whatever. I think of it as this is and we don't know that much about Snape's childhood, so this is partly just my interpretation, but this is someone who has never really been shown love before of any type in any way, had a pretty horrible childhood, was not particularly well cared for, didn't really have any real friends. And this was the first person and the only person pretty much in his entire life who showed him love. And that he will love her forever for loving him in spite of everything. And loving him for showing him what that love looked like.
I want that. Sorry, please continue.
And I think also, I think because nothing else to me really explains why he would put himself at such risk, why he would prioritize taking care of Harry in these ways. Like, to me, it's like at a point in there that we don't exactly explicitly have written, he makes the change from being obsessed with her to being like, oh, this is an incredibly loving person who loved me even though I didn't really do that much to deserve it, and who had all of these amazing values and fought against these things, and so I need to sort of make it up to her in some way. So I think it's a much more complicated love, and I don't think it's an obsessive love. It's an obsessive love for part of that time, but I don't think it's an obsessive love for that entire time.
I like that idea. I wish it were true, but I think for it to be true, he would have to be less than inherently cruel to Harry at all possible points. Like, if he had any genuine care for Lily, he would have had, like, oh, he has her eyes.
Yeah, to me, I think that he is a really fucked up person. So it is so complicated. Like, I think his self-hatred is, like, I think that people don't pay enough attention or don't think about enough the self-hatred that Snape is holding with him, and the fact that he is not self-hate. It's not self-hatred in the form of like, okay, Lupin has some self-hatred and he just like, it's all towards himself. Whereas Snape, I think, feels self-hatred that he then needs to find a outlet for. So I think that he can, like, seeing Harry every day is reminding him of the fact that it's his fault that Lily died, and he needs to he is constantly hating himself and doesn't have any ability to like take that and turn it into anything that is actually productive or process it. He is just living with that hatred and channeling it towards Harry because that's the only thing that he can do. And yet telling himself that, well, he's taking care of Harry, so he's doing what Lily would have wanted. It's complicated. Like, I think that he still sucks. Like, my argument is not that this exempts him from criticism, but I do think that it is not just like a obsessive, like, oh my god, she's so hot, like, you know, I love her so much. It's like she meant something to him because of the fact that she loved him. Like, I think it has even less to do with his love for her. It is about his love for her, but it's also the fact that she loved him is what matters so much to him and why he has to hold on to that, because she's the only person who's ever loved him.
Right. I mean, I think that I love that interpretation. I mean, I really do. And I struggle with it not being one. I think that the reason people think of it as obsessive love is I think that any love that is sustained like that without like new reason, or, you know, love naturally, like intense emotions like that just naturally fade over time. And I think that is one of the struggles that like I have always had with it. And also it doesn't seem to have. And then the other thing is that his Patronus has changed. And the only other example of a Patronus changing is also another example of like similarly in some ways obsessive love, which is Tonks. And that is shared, you know, explicitly as romantic. And so the idea that like his Patronus is also like matching hers, which is also, I don't know, the gender dynamics there have always been very interesting. It's like, why is it not a stag? Why is it a doe? But but my point is that like we have the comparison there, the Patronus shift is that that it's with romantic love. And I also feel that like this narrative that is being built, the subtext is that obsessive love is like something that is worthy of admiration, and like you should nurture it, like you should value that there is worth to the intensity of the emotion for its intensity itself. And that is virtuous.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, it kind of depends on what the definition of obsessive love. I guess when I was hearing obsessive love, I was thinking a sort of infatuation. But I mean, yes, of course he is obsessing over it. Like, there is obsession here. Like, that is true. Like, no matter what the, but it's not that I'm saying it's not romantic. I just don't think that it is. I think that there is romantic love in the love, but the love is different than just like, I don't think it's just like him laying in bed at night being like, oh my God, Lily, like, oh my God, like, love me. Like, you know, like, I don't think it's like that. I think it's like complicated. I think he has a friendship love for her. I think he has a romantic love for her. I think he has a gratitude towards her. He has a respect for her. Like, I think there's just a lot in there, and because it's like his only example of love ever, it becomes all of it. Like, that is what it all is, and that is what is fueling him. And I think, like, if he had other love in his life, he would let go of this. So I don't think it's completely like, it's better to just have one obsessive love than to, like, have a life filled with love. But I think it's showing you how a pretty horrible person could still do some pretty noble things because they had at least one example of love.
I think that's a beautiful read. And I think it's for a large part of it, I completely agree with, you know. I think that the issue for me is that there seems to be an uncritical it's like Snape is flawed. He's presented as flawed in all of the ways you just said. And I think where I struggle is that Tonks spends 9 months obsessed with a guy who is apparently not showing her any interest. And that is something that, like, that is, people are like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes people do.
Yeah.
I mean, not often. As someone who used to work with an incredibly boy crazy coworker, it still wasn't like that. You know, 9 months is a very long time for an emotional, like, attachment of that intensity, with seemingly little reciprocation. But that said, like, there is this, like, you know, the end goal, like, it essentially is reciprocated, like, you know, and the messaging here becomes that when you have more than one example of obsessive love, and one isn't Snape and his, like, really unique and particular relationship with it that is tied to this, like, really profound experience he had in his childhood. One is Tonks, where it's like the messaging is, if you really like a guy, don't give up on him, even if he seems miserable about it the whole time you're married to him.
I think it's so different with Tonks and Lupin, where I don't think that the love isn't reciprocated. I think that Okay, so during those 9 months...
We're talking subtextually, and there are no scenes where he seems to be happy around her.
But nobody... Okay, this is gonna... We've had this conversation so many times on this pod with Irvin about this, where he thinks that Lupin doesn't love Tonks, and I disagree. So I don't want to get into it too much, because we've discussed it a bunch. I really don't... I mean... To be honest, that whole portion of the books, like 6 and 7, it like really removes a serious amount of my enjoyment of the text. Like, I don't like to read those books as much. And I just find them like profoundly not even unengaging, but like disengaging, that section, like that whole plot line. Wow. That plot line in specific.
Yeah, I actually, 6 is one of my favorite books.
Oh, okay. I was going to be like, 6 is my favorite book. That plot line.
I love 6. I mean, I love Slughorn.
I mean, I would say... And yeah, we don't need to get too far into this, but I would say, if we are to believe that Lupin does not love Tonks and he still married her, then I think he's an absolute shit. And that doesn't fit with my reading of his personality. So I have to believe that he does love her. And I also, and this is partly from the Pottermore stuff, but also it appears that it is obvious that this is not the first, like, that scene in the hospital wing is not the first time they've had this conversation. I don't think that what Tonks has been told by Lupin is, your love is not reciprocated. I think she's been told, yes, it's reciprocated, however, I'm not going to act on it, which is very different. And I think that it's very easy to be sort of stuck in a place of not being able to move on from that, still hung up on maybe they will change their mind, when, especially because she thinks his reasons are pretty dumb. I don't think they're dumb, but she thinks they're dumb. Everyone seems to think they're dumb. So, you know, I think that's really fair situation.
Yeah.
I think you wanted
to me, it's, please, Sarah.
Yeah. Sophia, I'm inclined to lean on your side with this in particular, because I think that what we're seeing obviously is just like a microcosm of their friendship, their relationship, everything. And what we're seeing is that Tonks is always coming at this from a side of, oh, but love conquers all, and I love you and you love me, so what does it matter? Whereas Lupin is just so much more practical about it.
Yeah.
And he's using head over heart. And so it's kind of an opposites situation where Tonks is coming at it of the heart leading, and she wants to be with him, and she knows that he loves her and cares for her, but he's, in her mind, letting his head get in the way of everything. Whereas he is just trying to be practical, logical, and I think that he loves her so much that he's not going to impose himself and his issues upon her. And so I think that if he didn't love her as much as he does, then he'd be more inclined to just, oh yeah, sure, let's go for this. But because he cares about her so much, that is why he's so hesitant. That is why he's dragging his feet. That is why he's always letting the logic of the situation outweigh his own feelings and her feelings.
Yeah.
My thoughts with the obsessive nature of Tonks's love are that the problem isn't that she's hung up on it. It is that she loses all of her personality from the previous book, and becomes a shadow of herself. She's unable to use her magical abilities to the full extent of her person. She is basically has no interest. Like, we do not see her engage in anything sincerely other than her obsession with her obsessive. She is sick, literally sick with romantic love for Remus for 9 months. 9 months, she doesn't go home for Christmas to her own family.
Sorry, Siri, you can go first if you want.
Well, I was going to say, so I have a couple thoughts on this. The first is that I do agree. I think it is pretty extreme. I think that her actually letting her magical ability diminish because of her feelings is an interesting thing that is just really not explored more, because I think that there's a lot of little moments where we see that people's emotions really affect their magical ability, either pro or con.
Yep.
And I think that it's something that's just really not explored enough. However, I will also say that this sounds silly, but I know people in my real life who have legitimately been love sick. Like, they have felt so sick and realized that they need to be with a person or something like that. Or when they're apart from them, they feel physically ill. And so that's how someone that I know realized that they needed to be with the person that they're now married to. And all of that is because she said goodbye to him and she left, and then she became like immediately ill and had to go back and see him, and that's how they started dating. Like, it's a crazy story, but there's been a couple instances where I think that that's just a legitimate thing that happens. And I also think that it's another moment when you realize the age difference between the two of them, because Tonks isn't that much older than Harry and Ron and Hermione. Like, she is older, but she's not that much older in comparison to Lupin. And so she's coming at this much more from a younger, inexperienced standpoint. And when you think about people's love and crushes when they're younger versus when they're older, there does tend to be a lot more of that, oh, I will just, swoon and weep in bed and, oh no, woe is me. Whereas when you're older, you're kind of like, oh, well, that sucks.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've been lovesick. I mean, I like, that's the thing, is that, like, I have felt like, and it lasted like probably about 3 or 4 months. And so it's like, I have it has been like, it is such an intense and real thing. My problem is that it is not explored as a principal part of the text, and it is the only relationship that it was represented that way, and it's the only adult approach to relationship in the entire series. So it stands out for that, and because it's not explored more deeply, or and this was the subtext category. And so I actually agree about Remus's personality, but my solution isn't he has to love her. My solution is, I don't think it's good writing.
No, fair enough.
At the end of the day, it's like, I'm not going to force myself into thinking, I'm just not going to force myself into thinking I have to like this because it's a Harry Potter book.
I'm not saying you have to like it.
I didn't say you. Yeah, I said force myself, not Sophia Jenkins. Forcing me.
Yeah. I guess what I would say though is for on Tonk's behalf, I think that it is a different situation than most situations because he is in physical danger that entire time. That entire time he is with undercover with the werewolves, and I think that is a huge part of why she is this reaction is so extreme, is that
that's a good point.
He, like, we see her, like, you know, trying to figure, like, you know, there's like she hears about werewolves in the news and she like rushes into Hogwarts to be like, have you heard anything about Remus? Like, clearly it's very much on her mind, the fact that he is in danger. And to me, that really heightens the stakes so much. I think most people, like, can't necessarily fully put themselves in those shoes because, you know, most people, knock on wood, like, their loved ones are generally not generally safe, you know. But I think if we think about people whose loved ones are away at war or things like that, I think it's more of like, that is what we're imagining Tonks to be feeling, is just constant anxiety, constant, like, could something have happened to him? What's, like, it's not even necessarily about them being together all of the time. It's just like, what if something happened to him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, that she's also sick with worry.
Yeah.
But it's, as a reader experiencing it with the subtext of the reader going through the book for the first time or the second time or whatever, it's like, you don't have that context at the beginning for the first time. Even I didn't, because I read book 5 in order, comparably. You don't have that context for it. And also, like, this is where, for me, it becomes a Doyleist perspective of, like, how many different factors have to be introduced before it makes sense for Tonks to be feeling this way and for it, the intensity that she is feeling this way. Like,
whereas, for me, I love that you have to dig for it. Like, I love that you're like, this is really interesting. Why is this intense feeling here? It's not, like, fully explored textually as much, so you have to dig. Like, I guess I just enjoy that.
I enjoyed digging. Yeah, I definitely enjoy digging. I think I do it from a different perspective. And there's a lot of reason to believe that J.K. Rowling had other thoughts going on when she was, you know, I'm working on a piece that's going to be published. Well, I've written it, and I'm revising a piece for a collection called Powers. Oh my God, it's like PPP. And I always forget which one's the order. It's like Potions, Powers, and Prejudice, about identifying, like, the writing, like, where you can see from 2002 on, when J.K. Rowling started being on the internet, when she started writing this Harry Potter series after she had started being online, how it affected her text, and, like, how she, the ways that she's talked about that she, like, would, go in forums and things, and the ways that she interacted with fans and gave fan site awards and things like that, like, really impacted the way that she wrote the text itself in a way that she, during the writing of the series. So
interesting.
I actually, in all of the drama of not realizing what time, I just got a notification that I have a meeting in a half an hour.
Okay. So maybe let's keep on going for a half an hour, and then maybe we can take a break. All right, so let's move on to friendship love. So, we'll keep ourselves going. So our next question on the table is, what does the series believe about friendship love? So one thing that we talked about in our Yule Ball episode a month or so ago is that we see some evidence that loyalty to your friends comes first before loyalty to romantic interest. We all thought it was really endearing and special that Hermione, when she is on a date with Krum at the Yule Ball, Ron is saying, like, oh, you're going to be helping Krum now. And Hermione says, no, of course I want Harry to win the tournament. Of course I'm rooting for Harry. And we were just saying that we don't see it. It's not something that we'd seen very commonly in media, is where friends take priority over romantic interest. So that's one thing that I noticed. Did anyone have any thoughts about that? Or All right, we can move on. I think a really big theme is that you should be willing to put your life at risk for your friends. So Sirius, of course, says to Wormtail, you should have died rather than betray your friends like we would have done to you, done for you. We also see that like Hermione and Ron come with Harry on this trip and to find the Horcruxes, and that it's seen as a really huge, massive betrayal that Ron decides not to join them anymore. That, you know, the expectation is sort of course you're going to put your life at risk for your friends. And I think this is interesting because I think this is clearly, it's a very important value in the books. But also, if we think about it compared to sort of real life, it's not a question that commonly comes up in real life, you know? So I think it's like an interesting one to think about, this sort of expectation of course you're going to die for your friends, versus in real life, yeah, is that something that everyone assumes is part of friendship? I don't know. So I don't know. Yeah. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think that it's one of probably the strongest and most effective messages of the books, and like kind of is so strong that it's one of the things that supersedes some of, you know, unintentional or whatever the intent is on some less positive messaging. I think that like it's almost like what you were saying about Slughorn, where it's like in some situations, you know, in peace it's fine to be one way, but like in war, it's like they are in war. They're friends in war, and like they have to be a friend, to call someone your friend, your, you know, friend in arms. During a time of war means you have to be able to die with them. And like there are situations in our real life, like there are situations in the real world, perhaps increasingly so, where like people may be asked to like make choices to protect each other. So like I think that it's a wonderful message, and I think it's really well delivered personally.
Yeah.
I think we can also look at the fifth book with the mission to the Ministry, where we have not only the trio, but also the entirety of, or a large portion of Dumbledore's army going to the Ministry, where Harry's like, no, Neville, you're not coming. And he's like, well, too bad, I am.
And I think, interestingly, we mainly see that Harry is not expecting this of other people, and they are offering it, which I think is better. I think it's much better as a message that they are offering this, and he doesn't want them to put themselves at risk, because also he as part of being a friend, he wants his friends to be safe. But that he is that they are offering this. I think that there are just two big moments that I can think of where there's a sort of an expectation from the outside of like, you should have done this. And I think that with Ron, there is sort of a, you should continue to do this. Like, once you said you would, you should be here. And also with Sirius, like, you know, you should have died rather than betray your friends. But most of the time it's the friends who are choosing to do it, which I think is really beautiful. It's like, they are coming even though Harry doesn't expect them to come, and often doesn't even want them to come because he's worried about their safety.
Which might also be a bit of Harry's hero complex.
Harry's hero complex, but also, you know, he hates the idea of people putting themselves at danger for him, which I think shows how loving of a person he is, that he doesn't want anyone else to have to suffer. He's like, okay, I've taken it as a given that I have to suffer because I always do, but I don't want anyone else to have to suffer. I mean, I think one thing I find kind of interesting is like, there is a really strong loyalty, even in like certain situations where it's maybe not even based off of that much closeness. Like, okay, we don't know much about the Marauders in terms of all of their personal relationships, but like, I don't actually get the sense that the Marauders, most of them really cared that much about Wormtail. Like, I don't really get the sense that they were like genuinely close. I mean, like, emotionally close. Like, they were part of the friend group, and it's like, of course he's there, of course he's part of the friend group, but like, Sirius and James were like best friends. Like they were like super duper close. Whereas I don't really get the sense that Wormtail was. But we see that Sirius is saying like, of course I would have died for you. And so it's like, it doesn't even matter if you're like the best friend, you are still, of course I'm going to die for you.
I think there's just a little bit of an element of, with that particular friend group, yes, you know, Pettigrew may have been on the outskirts a little bit, but he was still let into everything. He was in Animagus, and he was with them for all of their escapades, and he kept Lupin secret, and they were a team, essentially.
Yeah, totally.
This group. And so I think that there's a little bit of, you know, I think it's McGonagall maybe who mentions that he was always kind of hanging on and following them around and things like that. But they still let him into everything. So there is a little bit of a disconnect with how he's seen. And maybe it was just because he didn't have as strong a personality. And so it seems as though he was kind of a hanger-on. But they still kind of allowed him into the inner sanctum of their friendship.
Right.
And so I think that possibly maybe Sirius and James and Lupin probably to a lesser extent, but Sirius and James at least were probably so close because of their shared history and that they were so much like brothers, and then that they didn't maybe let Wormtail know how much he was a part of things. And so potentially, you know, Pettigrew just thinks this whole time, oh, I'm just kind of here on the outskirts. They don't truly care about me the way they care about each other. And while that may be true, I don't think that he understood the level to which they did care about him. And so, and I think that that's a shame, because on the one hand, he probably should have figured it out with how much they let him in on, but also they probably, you know, as teenage boys, were probably not very verbal about their feelings and emotions. So I think that there's maybe some complicating issues where Sirius is like, of course I would have died for all three of you. And Wormtail's probably like, you would have? Really? Like, I meant that much to you that you would do that for me? And so he probably felt, being, you know, the smallest, the weakest, etc., that he wasn't worthy of all of their affection, and therefore didn't think that they would go out on a limb for him, when in reality they would.
Right. I mean, I think this is partly like, to me, sort of like how friend groups can form is you can form a friend group where like the friend group is super tight and like you are doing all these things together and you are a team. But like when it comes to more individual relationships between the people in the group, like I would say probably no one was personally, like individually that close with Peter. But he was part of the group. That is the group that does, like, the group does all these things. But like, you know, if Sirius wants to talk to someone, he's seeking out James, he's seeking out Lupin. And then maybe if neither of them are around, maybe he'll talk to Peter. And I think that like Peter could very easily, he knows he's part of the group, but he also probably knows none of them are close to me on that level in the same way. Like you can pick that up very easily. And I honestly think like Sirius saying he would die for him is more like, well, of course, like this is how the group works. Like this is, you know, we were all supposed to be like there for each other. Like that is just how the friendship works, is like we are part of this unit. We are, you know, always going to take care of each other. And I think, yeah, like it's not maybe as much about Wormtail as an individual as it is like, he is my friend and you die for your friends. Like he is my friend, so you die for your friends, regardless of whether or not they're like actually that close personally.
Right. And I mean, I think that, something I really, the contradiction of Peter Pettigrew, which is that he's written as an incredibly unlikable character, and we only ever see him in two modes. Evil, that's reductive, of course, because he's more cowardly than evil, truly. He's evil as cowardice, but evil. And we also see him as a hanger-on. We see him as obsequious, right? We don't see him as a full-fledged member of the group, which he had to have been for James to trust the life of himself, his wife, and his infant son to. At the end of the day, it's if Peter is lesser in this group, then James is an idiot. James, is so trusting as to give his life away to anybody at that point, right?
I think it's
there is always people struggle with Peter specifically because there is this contradiction in portrayal that people are always trying to navigate. And for me, it's a fine line of what you have both said about him. I think he does know. He has to have known. He didn't just send Sirius to Azkaban on, he didn't just kill 12 muggles. He killed 12 muggles and purposely framed Sirius. Something that is a level of maliciousness that it does really take to think about. But he also I think that, I think he chose to sacrifice this friend group because even though he knows how important it was to him in his own life.
I guess I would say, I think that Peter, I think that there is a bit of a different definition between Sirius and James and Lupin on what it means to be part of this friend group than there is for Peter. And I think maybe this goes to sort of messages about friendship in the series and stuff like that of I think that Peter was wow, these really cool, talented people want to be my friends. Of course I'm part of this group. Of course, this is I'm part of this group. Cool. But I think it didn't mean as much to him. Okay. And this is also okay, if we take away the betraying your friends part of it, I'd say very normal for people of that age of middle school and high school to have friend groups that are they are what's available at that moment. They are the people who like you. They are the people who are there. They are the people you do everything with. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you are seeing them as your ride or die. This is my friend forever. This is my everything, And I think Peter is thinking of this friend group as it's a friend group. I'm glad I have friends because I might not otherwise. They're here. I am part of this group. Wow, we get to do cool things together. But doesn't have those, he is not seeing this as, this is the most important thing. We are brothers to each other. We are, taking care of each other. This is going to last forever outside of high school. We are always going to be there for each other. He's seeing this as a thing he gets to be part of. And then it becomes a risk. And I think it's more about the different definitions of friendship, where James is trusting him because he's of course, this is what this group is. We have always been there for each other. We've always kept each other's secrets. We've always done all of this stuff. We are a unit. And Peter is kind of yeah, we did stuff together because that's what you do with a friend group. And now I've found other friends and moving on.
I think also that I think they had a very different view of what the friendship was. I think Pettigrew was very much in it because I think this is expressed in the books and the movies as well, was the Marauders give me safety from bullying.
Yeah.
I am safe with Lupin and James and Sirius. They are also some of the most talented students in the school, which means that I am being helped along academically. So this is the best choice for me objectively as Peter Pettigrew. And the moment that they get out of Hogwarts, it's well, I could take the risk and keep my friends here, but to be fair, they might all die, so I don't want to die. I'm going to betray them. So they the Marauders might have seen him as their adopted group member, where they are helping him out and supporting him, while he's he's a fair weather friend.
I mean, I just think it's so much more meaningful and so much more painful if he really did care about this friend group, and it's like he is so scared he chooses his own safety, or his perception of his own safety, over the people he does care about in his life, on a similar level even to how they care about him.
I have a hard time reading it that way, because it, I think, makes his personality kind of strangely contradictory throughout, whereas I think there's a reading where he is kind of the same person throughout and is just kind of a bit of a fair weather friend. And I have thoughts on this that we don't have time for, so I'll save those. But I do think that, what I would say is the other Marauders kind of saved him from bullying, but also they kind of bully him too. And I don't mean bully, but the one moment that we see in that memory, Sirius is telling James to stop playing with the snitch because Wormtail is going to wet himself or something, and then Wormtail goes pink, or it's clear that it is common for them to make fun of him a bit. And I think that's also, it's common from what I've witnessed of a lot of male friendships, there can be those dynamics that are more acceptable and seem strange to me, but I see it all the time. So, but I think that they are sort of we kind of make fun of him a bit, but we're all friends. And I think Wormtail, I could see him having some resentments that he doesn't want to, he's not gonna voice, because they are protecting him from much bigger, much worse bullying, and they are providing him with a lot. Mm-hmm. But I could see him sort of feeling on the outs of they don't actually respect me. And I don't think they respect him very much. To be honest, I don't think they respect him very much. So I don't know. I think that the friendship dynamics are complicated, and Sirius is taking it as a given that, sure, okay, maybe you were a little bit on the outs, maybe we made fun of you a bit, but of course, when push comes to shove, you're on our side. And I think Peter is sort of this friendship is not as is not as emotionally important to me as it is to you guys.
Yeah, I just think that the text is contradictory. Personally, I just think that if Peter feels that way, then other characters' actions become contradictory, even if it makes his copacetic. And it's one of those things where interpretation is really the only way you can get through it. Okay.
I'm not gonna go down this tangent. So we shall agree to disagree.
No, fight.
But
well, that was agreeing. That was agreeing.
Oh, well,
you said that
no, I mean that. Sorry, one of the things you were saying, I disagree with, which is the idea of that if Wormtail is this way, then it means that other people's in the other characters' actions are contradicting. I don't agree with that, but I don't actually I think we've gone as far as we need to.
Yeah, Remus has a line in 7, but
Yeah, and also I think this is kind of maybe a segue to that we see that maybe it's normal to have kind of rifts in friendship where friends are getting very angry at each other, and we see it more in the male friendships, and then they come back together, which I don't know how typical that is. This is not something that has never happened to me in my life. So to me, it's not something I have seen so much other than in media. But that's clearly something that is represented in the books, but not something that I've experienced. All right. So what is some subtext we receive about friendship love?
I had just a point that it really is. You mentioned this actually about the Marauders, just the idea that friendship is forced by proximity and bonds through trauma, the classic, if I quoted it, it'd be a misquote, but there's some things that you just can't, you have to become friends because of, and defeating a troll is one of them.
Totally.
But Ron, Harry, and Hermione, Hermione and them have just nothing in common, really, and Harry and Ron only have sort of personality sort of like traits in common, or they have similar like ethos on life. They both like Quidditch, you know, but they don't even have that much in common either, really. And they just are lifelong bonded friends, you know, for the rest of their lives because
A train ride.
of proximity and events.
Totally. And just like showing, I think it's often just showing a bit of kindness. Like, you know, Harry and Ron, it's partly chance. They show up in the same like compartment on the Hogwarts Express, so total chance. And then they're nice to each other, and that's all it takes. And I think especially at that age, that's all it takes. Like, you're friendly, and then you're like, yes, we're friends.
Yeah, I think the kindness is a really important point also. Yeah.
So what does the series believe about parental love? We definitely get a lot in the series about mother's love, and that it's seen as sort of the most pure, the most unwavering type of love there is. It has this like real magic to it, and I think really represented by Lily at the very beginning, sacrificing herself for Harry, but then also Narcissa at the end, lying to Voldemort for Draco. Like, that's sort of the like bow that ties up the series, is just like, you know, mother's love is the most important kind of.
Without a doubt, for sure. It's sacrificing for your children.
Yeah.
I think that an interesting thing that we see throughout is first how almost difficult to come by parental love is in the series. And also the big choices and dire circumstances that come when you don't have it. Because we see, you know, Ron obviously has the love of both of his parents. Now, you can make an argument that maybe they have a lot of kids to be spreading that love around, and it may be difficult for Ron to feel that all the time because he does tend to get a little bit shunted to the side. And, you know, she always forgets I don't like corned beef, and it's always a maroon sweater, which is his least favorite color, and things like that. And so he kind of has to make choices to continue to love his family to a really high extent, even when he may not actively feel that love on a regular basis. But then we also have, you know, Hermione, who is often without her parents. And so we don't really see that relationship very much. And we have Harry, who doesn't have parents, does not have parental love until he finds it in other people like Molly and others. And so it's very interesting, you know, whereas Harry takes the opportunity to find that parental love elsewhere and to really cherish it, then you have people like Sirius who do the same thing. You know, he doesn't get along with his family. He leaves his family. He finds his family in James's family and really becomes kind of one of them instead. And then you have Voldemort, who completely rejects any form of parental care because of what he's experienced. And so you have this really interesting choice that needs to be made. Well, if I don't have that parental love myself, do I go and I find it and I latch onto it because I know how important it is? Or do I reject it all and take my chances? And the series very much rewards finding that love elsewhere because it is so important. And I think that that's also just true in the world.
Right.
The love of parents towards their children is one of the most important bonds that any child or adult or anybody has. And if you don't have that for whatever reason, it can make life more difficult. And you really have to work to, you know, kind of find a replacement or figure out a way to feel the worth that you get from that affection elsewhere. And it's, I think that this is probably one of the types of love that, you know, we've talked about that I think is the most true to life.
Yeah.
From the series to real life.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. I think that's true. And it's definitely a huge theme, especially because Harry grows up without parents, that this is he's always like finding these father figures or mother figures, or, you know, like this is definitely like in every book there is a way that this connects back, this loss, this like lack that he has, and how he's trying to find that. Yeah. Another part of this sort of mother's love is that like it doesn't really matter what your child does, that you love them anyway. It's completely it's constant. So I think that we see that with Molly with Percy versus Arthur. And I'm not saying that Arthur doesn't love Percy, because I know he does, but Arthur is really holding on to that anger that he feels, that sort of like, you know, he has decided that he doesn't want to be part of this family, so I'm not going to try, like, I'm not going to. And Molly is just like, I just want my son back. She just, you know, will do anything. And she keeps on coming back, like going, like sending him Christmas things, going to his apartment, trying to make this happen, even though she keeps on getting rejected. And like, you get the sense that she would just keep on doing that her whole life, just to try to get Percy back.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that Petunia is somebody I think about, because, you know, that love can, you know, it's not anything, you know, a mother loves anything her son does, but it can verge on too much. You know, she maybe shouldn't love anything her son does, because, you know, as Dumbledore says, like, you know, the damage you inflicted, at least you didn't inflict the damage you've inflicted on this poor child. Yeah. Like, which is interesting, because it is like Molly and Petunia really are similar in that ways. Although, and they're similar in that it's kind of, you know, problematized in that, like, Molly seems to, you know, she picks favorites based on like academic performance sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I think what's really interesting with Petunia and Dudley is that I think actually Petunia, like, you might argue that Dudley is living up to her own values, that it's not so much that she, well, I guess maybe not with like beating up kids on the street, but she doesn't know about that. So I think it's like a willful blindness, like not asking any questions, but also some of the things that Dudley is doing that we would find objectionable, she is just like, oh, well, that's what what my son should be doing. Like, you know, they are really actively, you know, rewarding him for treating Harry badly, for example, or, you know, hitting people with his smelting cane or whatever, you know, like they are actively like, these are our values. You're living up to them. But I think, yes, there are probably other things he's doing that she wouldn't agree with, but she is not looking for them.
And he gets in trouble in school when he's at Smeltings, I think, and then, you know, they just find, you know, ways to excuse it. She's willfully ignorant to the level of refusing to, when it doesn't fit her values, she like refuses to perceive the information.
Totally. I think that, and I think Molly is not like that. She is looking for the things that her kids have done wrong and like trying to, you know, put them right if they're doing something wrong. However, so like, I think with Percy, it's like, she recognizes that he is not living up to her values, but is like, you're part of the family either way. And I think that's kind of the difference between them, is like, she is not being willfully blind so much as she's like, but it doesn't matter. You know, you're still my son.
Yeah, I think there's, like, a good example here was with the diet and Dudley's weight, is she is actively like, nope, I am completely blind to the realities here. My Dudley is the norm, and whatever anyone says is wrong, until the point where it's like, oh, there aren't clothes in his size available anymore. Like, it's just either he loses weight or he doesn't have clothing. For school.
Which personally I think is a problem with the school. They should make bigger sizes. Like, because people's bodies come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. So to be honest, like on that one, I, as much as I don't think you should just like let your kid eat like, you know, donuts constantly or whatever, because like they're a kid and don't have self-control, like that is not great parenting. Like, I do think that like some of that is, a judgment coming from the outside that is unfair, because clearly, like, genetically in their family, they're a big family. Like, Uncle Vernon, Aunt Marge, they're a big family, and the the school should be giving them clothing. So, but I would say that there's definitely that's my own feeling, but I don't think that's the message coming across in the story. I think the message coming across in the story is she's being a bad mom. But I think that comes to sort of a larger point of a message that spoiling your kid isn't loving your kid. Like, that is not how you show love towards your kid. And, like, you're actually doing them more harm in the long run by spoiling them. And I don't think, I think there's a distinction. It's not that the text is saying, like, parents who spoil their kids don't love them. Like, I don't think it's saying, like, oh, Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon don't love Dudley. They clearly do. But, like, in terms of sort of the action of loving them, like, that's not how you show love.
Yeah. It's being a helicopter parent, and that's not exactly healthy.
Well, it's sort of combination of that plus also... well, what did you mean by that? Sort of...
Like the term, like, she's kind of sweeping the ground in front of him and kind of clearing out any obstacles and protecting him from any kind of consequences. Like, Dudley lives a consequence-free life.
Totally, he does. I guess I had heard that term more as, like, someone who's, like, micromanaging their kid, like, controlling every thing that they're doing, and, like, constantly trying to, like, protect and just, and I think she kind of can be a bit lax, actually, as a parent, where she's just like, yeah, go off and have tea with whoever and, come back whenever you want to. So, like, she kind of is a bit too lax while also, trying to protect him from any consequences. It's kind of like somewhere, I don't know, in the middle there. And then finally, I think this comes back to our earlier point about Lupin and Harry. I think that one of the big textual things we see is this idea that parents shouldn't leave their kids unless they have to. That's what Harry says. And to him, that is really the most, like, sacrosanct principle. And we see him judging Merope for dying when she could have used magic to stay alive for her son. And we see him very explicitly judging Lupin for leaving his kid. But this is a little bit complicated, the message here, in an interesting way, because Dumbledore clearly in that conversation has pity for Merope. He is not really saying, like, this was a terrible thing that she did not use magic to stay alive. So I think the message is a little bit complicated, but at least from Harry's point of view, it's like, you should do everything you can to not leave your kid unless you are forced to. Yeah, and I think sort of bringing it back to our conversation about Lupin earlier, that, Harry is giving this advice of, like, you have to go back to Tonks, less thinking about Tonks' safety, but I think more because of this sort of principle of, like, you have a kid now, you have to stay with your kid, like, no matter what, like, even if it's putting everyone at risk, like, you have to stay with your kid.
Because also we have to consider here that we don't know if Lupin has easy, stable access to Wolfsbane anymore.
That is a great question. We don't know that. He probably doesn't.
But, I mean, I think that that's the whole point, is that even a werewolf without, the whole point, not directed at either of you at all. The point being that, like, this idea that Remus is dangerous to the people around him when he's really the most dangerous to himself. Obviously he literally is because he's a werewolf, but, like, with, like, even the most basic foresight, he can be contained. Like, they are competent wizards and they can contain him. And so I've never worried that he would be unsafe around Tonks and his child. And, I think that fear, the reason that Remus's lycanthropy is so compelling to audiences is because it's been tied to real life fears that are also baseless.
True, but I think in this case, in the seventh book, the danger comes more from association with him than it does with. So, like, in some ways, him Yeah.
I'm only speaking of the Wolfsbane.
Yeah, so him leaving, like, I don't think, honestly, it wouldn't have, like, I don't think he's leaving at that point because he thinks that it will actually, like, because it will actually protect Tonks, because Tonks has already married him, Tonks is already having a kid with him, like, she already has a target on her back. So, like, I think no matter what, telling Lupin to go home is actually good advice. I think he shouldn't have married her in the first place, to be perfectly honest, but, given that we're in this situation, I think that is good advice that Harry is giving. But we see, and to be clear, obviously, I also believe that parents shouldn't leave their kids unless they have to. Like, I think that's, like, you know, a pretty acceptable belief that most people have. But I think that we see how, like, that this is so central to Harry's personality, which makes so much sense because he was left, I mean, not intentionally, and, you know, his parents didn't want to, but it still has scarred him for his life, you know, the fact that he didn't have them. So, you know, we see him being like, nope, Merope should stay alive. Nope, Lupin has to go back to his child. Like, you know, he is very clearly, like, it's a big trigger point for him. It's very upsetting for him because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have issues with almost all of the framework of that scene, but I have no issues with Harry's response. Like, right. I think that his pain and his anger are, like, incredibly understandable and justified in that moment. And and it's one of those things where it's like, it's two people with different, very painful perspectives coming at it from different angles, and that, like, Harry is right and Remus is also right. Like, you know, Remus has, and also nobody truly understands him. And the only other werewolf we get is Fenrir Greyback, who is, like, an encapsulation of all of the toxic and devastatingly harmful stereotypes that Remus is supposed to be, you know, against.
Yeah.
And the Wagga Wagga werewolf, who I don't think has an opinion on these matters. So,
yeah.
If he exists, I mean, he probably does at least. But you know, there's nobody who has, I mean, one of my, like, favorite cringe moments of the series is when Hermione's telling Remus that, like, you know, how self-oppression and werewolf oppression are so similar. It's so, like, you know, teenage girl going up to somebody who knows way more about the situation and is personally involved and is like, I understand oppression. Mm-hmm. Like, but, like, Remus he has a lived life experience that Harry and nobody can understand.
Right. That's true.
You know, because of the situation, and not even other werewolves, because of the way that he was raised. Just in, like, he alone is a werewolf who attended Hogwarts with lycanthropy, you know, instead of being bitten later in life. So, I just think it's one of those things of, like, two people with real perspectives that are valuable clashing, and I think that is, you know, I think Harry's valid.
Yeah, yeah. And, like, I think, I agree. I think that, I understand why Lupin is so terrified and upset and all of that. And yet I think that, of course, he should go back because the situation is what the situation is, and he needs to, like, deal with it, you know?
Yeah.
He needs to do what he can.
Something I was thinking about is that, like, part of the reason, you know, despite this, I rarely have conversations about the, like, intricacies of these parts of the text because I'm so uninterested in this, the way that the werewolf, the lycanthropy of it all ends in the series. The message that is sent is that essentially, like, nothing has changed. That Remus Lupin, like, if he were to exist in a theoretical book 8 and was alive, he would not be able to teach at Hogwarts still. Yeah. That, you know, that there's no meaningful moving the bar on any sort of, like, oppression outside of the, like, very present evil. And so I am so, like, saddened. You know, I was just thinking, and Sophia, like, I truly, like, I completely understand and agree with what you're saying about, like, you know, Remus shouldn't have married Tonks, but it just makes me so tremendously sad that we are in this world that is supposed to be this transformative, magical experience that cannot imagine a world without oppression, or at least, like, where it improves.
Right.
And so, you know, and so for me, it's just really about, like, for me, like, I don't value that ending for Remus Lupin. Like, I don't value this world or find it compelling. And some of my feelings about like our own approach to texts and what we find meaning in is like we make that meaning for ourselves at the end of the day. And I personally really believe in doing it like with the book, like caring about the book and, and interpreting things with the book. But at the end, like, what we walk away from, I don't know. I want a wizarding world where that is true. And I just refuse to ultimately believe in one where oppression doesn't, the bar isn't moved.
Yeah. Well, I think it's true of not just, werewolves, but all of the different parts of prejudice that we see in the wizarding world that, I mean, the end of the book is not one of it. The end of the book is like Voldemort is killed and the Death Eaters are being rounded up. And that's sort of, we don't get what comes next. And I kind of like that because it kind of allows for the possibility of lots of different things to come next. And also I think it feels real because Voldemort is this like big evil. And then there are also all of these like prejudices that we see woven into daily life of the wizarding world that also would need to be rooted out. And it's like, this is the first step, but there are so many steps to come and it feels realistic. So I don't know. I guess I agree with you that we are not given a sort of like, and now everything has changed, but that doesn't to me mean that it hasn't changed. It's just left open of sort of what might come next. I don't know. Yeah.
We have to do 100% of that work ourselves, though. If we completely...
I agree.
Because...
And I think, yeah. And I don't mind that, to be honest.
I really do. I mean, it really affects my feelings about the series because it really impacts, especially, I mean, Remus Lupin being my favorite character, but like the ways that these characters, we are introduced to these fictionalized versions of oppression. And, it is a magical world. Like there are realistic aspects to it, but like, as the books progress, they get more and more realistic and they become analogs to these, or they start in some ways as analogs to real life oppression. And so to represent them so painfully and so clearly, and then to also have an overarching narrative about defeating evil, but defeating evil, the evil is an overarching, vague, fascist evil, but the real oppressions that are impacting individual characters and creatures are the ones that are not even begun to have meaningful approach with. I just think is a very really demoralizing message about like what comes first and where are we starting. And like, I don't believe in a version of Remus Lupin's story that ends the way that it ends with like no, sliding backwards almost on this scale. Like, why did he go to Hogwarts? Like, was his life, what was it filled with like at the end of the day? So, we don't have to answer all that questions now, but, or ever, but like, all those questions now, but like, yeah, I just, it really impacts I love having something, and I promise this is my last thought on it, but like, I love having open-ended questions. That is not, like, I totally agree with that. In fact, I want more, but I do think that when you introduce these concepts, not really addressing them in any meaningful way for change is like really troubling.
I guess my one, and then we'll move on. But my one thing is like, I think there is something that about bringing up concepts that have analogs in the real world and not solving them for us that forces us to think about how we might solve them for ourselves. Like, I think that there is something there of sort of being like, this is a complicated question. There are so many things like this that we still have. What are we going to do about it? And I kind of like it, leaving it in that way that we do have to do the work, because that is kind of the work that we need to do in the real world. But I can totally see your point. I just have a different take on it.
I agree as well. I'm going to jump in here as well with a different take. And that is that, like, I agree, there's a lot of improvement to be done, and I think one of the major issues there is there's just so many problems. There's like, it's just an unending pile of, to put it mildly, shit in this world that isn't being dealt with, and that could be a series of episodes. So I agree that there is something unfulfilling about like closing the book and the world not being better apart from Voldemort being dead. But like this world is just deeply, deeply flawed.
Yeah. And so is ours. So yeah.
Yeah. I just, for me, it's like, why do these characters, if these characters exist and you started the story with them, is this not an opportunity to incite some idea?
Yeah.
You know, of course we have to solve it ourselves, but Harry solves the different, you know, fascism, you know, in the text. You know, why can't we start to do so through the characters we've been introduced to and the concepts?
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
So what is the subtext that we receive about parental love? I mean, I don't think that this is explicitly meant to be a message, but definitely the focus on mother's love as the most sort of important, pure thing does leave the question of, like, a father's love, does that not matter quite as much? Or is that not quite as pure and intense? Like, it's not that we don't see Harry caring about his father figures and all of that. That's not really what I'm saying. It's just, you know, there's so much focus on mother's love as the most pure thing. So it does leave a sort of open question about father's love. And yeah, Lillian, you had a thought about grief. Do you want to share that?
Yes. Yes, I really do. I mean, this is really, I mean, it's obviously very Doyleist, but it's also reflected in the text, is that J.K. Rowling has been very forthright about her feelings about her mother's passing during the writing of the first book, and how, you know, the first how it really informed her writing of the series, and really what we see in Harry's relationship with parental figures. I mean, Harry's parents, the way that they're introduced are so they're like the dead parents that you need to start this the story, and it's only in later books that they become really full-fledged characters that he starts to grieve. And then Harry just has this cyclical relationship with grief that is so connected to all parental love, basically. I mean, he kind of doesn't exist without it. And I think that it is both something I can imagine is incredibly compelling and valuable, especially for children who are grieving things that, like, they shouldn't be having to grieve at the time in their life that they're at, right? And at the same time, it's very strange because there is a message in the Harry Potter series that essentially is that, like, you're loved, like, that you are going to have to make it out on your own, like, generationally, that it's you and your friends who are going to have to solve the issues of your generation without any mentorship or like familial love from living mentors. You know, I just think it's incredibly personal to Rowling, you know, as an author, and It really affects the text and, like, some honestly, like, negative messaging that it sort of comes away with.
Well, that is really interesting because, like, if you think about some of the subtext, it is like, because it's a boarding school, it's like the message is kind of like kids past the age of 11, like, don't really need their parents and also can't really rely on their parents or ask their parents for help. Like, there is a real, like, for all of them, even those who haven't lost their parents, it's kind of like you have to figure things out for yourself. You cannot rely on parental guidance.
This is a bit of an English thing, to be fair, with the boarding schools.
I think that's true.
And the history there is quite interesting. There's a pretty deep connection between the prevalence and expansion of the English boarding school system and the Empire. So England had a pretty big history of colorful characters, emotion, literary, like Shakespeare and so on and so forth. And the boarding schools were partially created to instill this English stiff upper lip that would then create the bureaucrats, the emotionally stunted stiff upper lip that would then lead to bureaucrats that would run the empire. So there is some kind of point in, like, disconnecting between the children and the parents by having a boarding school, which is, just in the wizarding world, seems kind of illogical considering flu powder.
No, but it makes, that's really interesting. I didn't know all of that context. That's really interesting. I mean, I agree. The sort of flu powder, the ability for magical travel does make it seem like this is a very intentional choice that you're being separated from your parents for that time.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm also so interested in the representation of Hogwarts as a sort of continuation of incredibly popular 20th century boarding school novels. Of basically non-magical versions of like you make a group of friends and you experience adventures. And J.K. Rowling's incredibly conscious, stated understanding and like this is when I'm in the text, I try not to use, it becomes like when does referencing interviews and things, but it's everything. Everything about the series is such an intentional using the boarding school like language of the early books and then trying to transition it into a more serious and realistic approach for the later YA novels. But that tension of trying to do that transition is where a lot of people's issues with the series come from. I wrote a paper about Dumbledore in grad school for my master's degree that was about how people perceive Dumbledore negatively because he is such a hallmark of the boarding school genre. So I guess what I'm saying is I completely agree. And there's like so many perspectives about why exactly boarding schools are functioning here. And it's like, you have to make back to the point about friend love. It's like, of course, friends become these people you would die for when you're separated from your family from age 11,
Yeah. And no, and it also from the sort of Doyleist perspective, it makes total sense. Like this is why, so many characters are orphans in so many books, because like if the parents can fix things, then the story is gone,
Exactly.
Yeah.
My recommended reading would be Charlie Bone for that perspective, because I think the uncle character in the Charlie Bone series, Pat Newbeam, is like exceptionally interesting for an adult who doesn't fix things and they have to figure out how to make that work, Yeah. No, it is interesting. And I think, I think this is an interesting subtext of parental love and grief because, clearly this is, for Harry and for J.K. Rowling, like this is personally relevant as in like losing your parent before you should or before you thought you would. But all of us, at some point are losing our parents. But also not just that, it's like part of growing up is like realizing that your parents are flawed. We see that with Harry. Part of growing up is like, flawed and therefore not always someone you can trust. And then also part of it is like, you have to do things for yourself. Like that is part of this story is like Harry thinks that his dad is going to save him with the Patronus, and then he is the one who has to do it. And that is sort of a universal grief that we have to go through is like, oh, our parent is not going to save us. We have to save ourselves. And like that is just universal to life, but definitely in the series it is like from a pretty young age. It's like, your parents are not someone you can rely on to protect you and save you. Exactly. Yeah, I think that I have a million thoughts that I don't want to say for time reasons. Mostly like in agreement, just elaborating on, you know.
Yeah.
For another time. Okay. So what does the series believe about sibling love? I think this is an interesting one because this is one of the more like fraught versions of love that we see represented. I think there is a message that sibling relationships can fall apart more easily, but that they're never fully broken. So we see a few sibling relationships that fall apart. We have Percy and his siblings. We have Albus and Aberforth. We have Lily and Petunia. But for all of those, like Percy is the most obvious of like, he comes back, he apologizes, they bring him back in. It's as if nothing has happened, you know. For the other two, the relationship is always broken to some extent, but it's never gone. Like, even Aberforth at the very end, he's kind of like, he isn't speaking very nicely of Albus. He is kind of like, don't do it just because Albus wants you to, like, this war is over, like, all of this. But then he still shows up. And, like, even just throughout their adult relationship, we don't see that much, but we see that Aberforth is like, you know, telling Albus when like people come into the Hogshead, you know, he is communicating with Albus, he is helping Albus out, but even though the relationship is fraught and is not healed from their childhood.
Yeah.
And with Lily and Petunia, we never see like any real healing, except we do just get a few moments where, like, I love the moment when Harry looks at Aunt Petunia and he's like, for the first time in his life, he fully, recognized that Petunia was his mother's sister, and that she understood how scary Voldemort being back would be, and like that she had this emotional connection to that. And yeah, I think that we get this sense that like she is not as indifferent to what happened to her sister as we're often led to believe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think that I think their relationship is so compelling because there is such it's like compelling because it isn't like she loves her, like she does love her, but like isn't like she's like, I love her personality and I regret everything. It's like there is just pain. There's unresolved pain that comes from having cared about somebody that you've lost in whatever way that means.
Yeah.
But also the relationship ending where it did.
Right. Never having that opportunity for them to have any more positive relationship. Yeah. And I think that it's really interesting, in the Spinner's End chapter, we have Narcissa takes out her wand against Bellatrix, and Bellatrix is like, Sissy, your own sister, you would never. And I think that's so funny, kind of, and fascinating, because Bellatrix is so evil and like has very little in the way of moral code. And yet even for her, she's like, a sibling bond is so powerful that you would never attack your sister, wouldn't you? Like, and Narcissa actually says, there's nothing I wouldn't do anymore. So Narcissa isn't even. But like, I think that really shows this message of like a sibling relationship. It can be fraught, but like, you're never not bonded for life over that.
Mm.
Right. I mean, this is such a small example, but I actually think of the Gideon and Fabian Pruitt and the way that their deaths are described are so intertwined. They are a unit together, and they go down together fighting 5 Death Eaters. And they even though Fabian is mentioned separately, when Molly gives Harry his watch, like, there is something about like this bravery that is also this sibling bond. Like, they are like, again, a unit.
Another message I see is about sort of competition between sibling relationships. Like, that seems to be kind of a given in the series. Like, Lily and Petunia. Like, Petunia just cannot get over the fact that Lily has this thing that she wants. And Ron is just, like, struggles to get over the fact that his siblings have these achievements that he doesn't have. So yeah, and I think, to be honest, that's fairly true of life, that there is, often competition between siblings. In not necessarily in a bad way, but just like a lot of comparison, a lot of why do they have that and I don't have that? Why are they good at this and I'm not good at this? Like, and that it seems like, we can see the ways that causes tension in these relationships.
Especially for Ron, since his brothers have literally hogged every niche you could have.
It's true.
Yeah, it seems that siblings have very realistic strife unless they're twins.
Yeah, but like it's literally like every single thing you could have your niche being at Hogwarts, one of his siblings has already checked off in a somewhat iconic way. So what the hell is Ron gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really compelling.
So, what is some subtext that we receive about sibling love? I think we see quite a few indications that sometimes romantic relationships can get in the way or make sibling love more complicated. Albus and Grindelwald, definitely, that is a big thing that causes conflict with Aberforth. Andromeda falling in love with Ted Tonks, causes this break between her and her sisters. I think the fact that Petunia chooses to marry Vernon, like, I think already there was a break, but it definitely, I'm sure, heightened that because he is so anti anything to do with magic or wizards or whatever.
I always thought that was her being the driving force there.
I mean,
Yeah, I always thought he was I always think of Vernon as a tool, like he's a choice that Petunia made, and that I don't think Vernon's particularly interesting, but I think Petunia is, and that he's just something she wields to. Not that they're always in agreement, but marrying him was the choice that he made, and his actions are a reflection of what she wants to see.
I agree with that. I would say he tends to be very extreme, even more extreme than she is, about some of the we can't have any indication of anything magical, or he can be very dramatic about it. So I don't think it's not that he doesn't believe those things himself, but I think, yes, she chose him in a way to emphasize that difference and to sort of go more into that life as a response. I think it's totally, it was her choice. But I think if she had chosen differently, then her relationship with Lily, if Lily had survived, probably, is more accurate to say, would have looked differently. So I think that potentially that romantic relationship is, and that was her choice, but that it continued to cause that rift to grow larger. So, I don't know. But even with, Narcissa and Bellatrix, Narcissa, it's clear her loyalty is now towards her husband and towards her son, and no longer really towards Bellatrix, because Bellatrix sort of criticizes Lucius, and Narcissa is don't you dare criticize my husband. She is very much, she is willing to pull out her wand at Bellatrix. She's willing to go against what Bellatrix wants, but she is you don't dare talk badly about my husband. You don't dare do anything towards my son. It's clear that, I don't know, that there are moments where people are sort of choosing their romantic relationship over their sibling relationships in ways that cause tension. And I'm not even saying that as a bad thing. Andromeda choosing Ted Tonks, that's clearly a positive thing, but it does seem like we're seeing ways in which the person who your sibling chooses romantically is affecting your relationship with them.
But I also think here we see Bellatrix choosing Voldemort over her sibling relationship as well. So it is also that direction where she's kind of abandoning the family, for the absolute loyalty to the Dark Lord.
Yeah, I'd say in that Spinner's End scene, she kind of is not choosing Voldemort over Narcissa. She's sort of choosing Narcissa over Voldemort because, she knows that Narcissa is about to sort of betray Voldemort's trust. And if she really was choosing Voldemort over Narcissa, she'd go tell Voldemort, Narcissa isn't trustworthy. She's saying these things. But she's instead going to Narcissa and saying, don't do this. This is going to put you in danger. If he finds out, she's thinking about Narcissa potentially being in danger. And then, she stays there for this whole, unbreakable vow, and we don't get any indication that she tells Voldemort what happened. So she's keeping Narcissa's secret, which is a pretty big deal. So I'd say she's loyal to Voldemort, but she is kind of prioritizing Narcissa here.
I love that take. I'd never really thought about it. That I give up on the sentence. Whatever. I love the take.
And it's interesting because we think of I think of Bellatrix as having no morals, and yet this is one area she seems to have she seems to be loyal to her sister, and that's pretty much it. Loyal to her sister, loyal to Voldemort, and that's pretty much it. I don't know. Okay, so some instances of love that we see in the series. So things that didn't really fit into those categories. So it could be chosen family. We'll talk a bit about Dumbledore and Harry, extended family, but, any other thoughts that come up of things that we've missed out on. And we talked about this bit already, but pretty explicitly, chosen family is shown as often more important than blood relations. Harry is choosing the Weasleys, Sirius is choosing the Potter family. It's just, there's a recognition that the family you're born with is not always family that's best for you. And we see how, like, very intentionally choosing your family is important. Another thing is, you know, with extended family, there seem to be really strong ties for most people with their immediate family, but extended family ties are less important. And I think we see this with the Dursleys, that they really don't care that Harry is their blood relation. Like, there's no, like, we saw with the sibling ties that, like, there's always a bit of that, they are my sibling, they are tied to me in this way, that bond can't be broken. I feel like with the Dursleys, like, they really don't see Harry in that way. They're kind of like, he's a stranger who was dumped on our doorstep. Like, they don't really see him as, they don't see themselves as having responsibility to them, and he doesn't see himself as, like, being meaningfully connected to them.
Yeah.
And then even the Weasleys, they don't seem that close to their extended family. Like, we see some extended family at their wedding. We hear about some extended family, but it's not like any of their holidays, any of their extended family comes to. Which also with, you know, magic, it's not that hard to travel. So does seem sort of notable that, yeah, we don't see that many examples of, like, close extended family.
It is also maybe a question of what Harry notices, in my opinion. It's the thing that comes back again and again, where Harry isn't always that observant.
But Harry goes to their house for Christmas and stuff. It's not like, you know, a lot of people will visit grandparents or aunt and uncles, cousins over Christmas, and we never hear about that, and Harry never sees it, even when he's there. So, yeah, it seems like more like the family unit is important, but not the extended family so much.
And it creates one of the biggest, like, kind of logical discrepancies, like, not, you know, in the text, but when you start to think about things, because you could think, what happened to Lily and Petunia's parents? Where are all the grandparents? You know, they were so young when they all died. Like, they were so young, this generation, that it's like, it isn't believable. And, you know, even I just don't buy all these different reasons, Pottermore or Pottermore not included, for, like, X person being dead or not there or whatever. I'm like, statistically, this is crazy. My suspension of disbelief can actually support, like, actually, like, a lot. But
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like,
the simple answer is grandparents would have been inconvenient.
Yes.
Exactly. I'm completely, like, the thing is that my suspension of disbelief only supports a lot when I incorporate the truth, which is grandparents are inconvenient. And then when I'm reading the book, I just am like, this is a fantasy world where everyone dies when they're 45 for some reason. Like, it's a fantasy world, and I'm not going to think that, like, I'm not going to think like that because it's unfair to the text, which is trying to tell me a children's story at this moment, you know?
Well, I to be honest, as much as this frustrates me, I do relate to it. Like, I am working on a story at the moment that is, like, it's based off of historical records or whatever. So I'm like, my main character is based off a real person who had 7 siblings, it's a family of 8, like, in their immediate family. And based on the records, she has grandparents, she has aunts and uncles, she has cousins, like, tons of cousins who live near her, all of these things. And I'm like, that is too many characters. Like, I cannot make these characters all relevant to the story. They're inconvenient. They are like, how is anyone going to keep track of them? Some of them have the same names. It's just like, there are too many characters. And, like, with the Weasleys, yeah, we have, like, they have 7 kids already. We can't have them have a bunch of cousins too. Like, you know, we can't, like, keep track of that many characters and have them matter for the plot and have us care about them. It's just too many people. So they can't be close to their grandparents. They can't be close to their cousins. We'll just ignore them. They don't exist.
Yeah. And if you write that book, it's called A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
And you never finish.
Right. Like, nobody wants to keep track of that family tree. Like, that's the problem, is, like, yes, it's realistic for people to have, you know, lots of people in their extended family, and yet nobody wants to keep track of that family tree, and I don't blame them. So, yeah.
It's you know, we know that Harry is somehow related to the Peverells. In Game of Thrones, it's like, well, there's the Lannisters of the Lannisport, the Lannisters of Casterly Rock, There's the Rains. Oh, there's a blood rain sword that might have been taken from the Rains like 200 years ago, and that's why it's in the Iron Islands. Sorry. It's like, we don't need that kind of detail because people get confused.
No one cares.
It's great for the nerds and all of us to be like...
Oh, unlike you, who's reading it not nerdily.
Yeah, exactly. Who can like do like genealogy research on the Nymeria Martell family of Dorne and why they're called princes and not lords. It's really niche, and you can do it, but there's no reason to.
Yeah.
No offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's Charlie Bone example again, where it's like, and it's fast. In that, like, Charlie's like family house that he lives in is so funny. It's like his mom and his grandma on both sides, his grandma, like both of his grandmas, and then his great uncle. And it's like, what is this dynamic? It makes me laugh so hard. And then by the time you're done by like the end of the series, you're like, why are there so many people in this house? They're not all relevant. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not even that many characters.
Yeah. So another form of love we see is with Dumbledore and Harry. So this is an interesting sort of example of love for an individual versus love for the collective. And this question of sort of what is Dumbledore willing to put Harry through in order to take care of the rest of society? And like, is that love? Like, what does it look like? Like, this, I think, comes back to this bigger question of like the emotion of love versus the action of love. And Harry in the 7th book says, like, Hermione is saying that Dumbledore loved you, and he says, this isn't love, this mess he's left me in. And I feel like that's the sort of action versus the feeling. Hermione is saying, of course he loved you, as in he has this emotion of love. And Harry is saying no, because the way he's acting, that isn't love. Yeah, I think it's really interesting where, like, Dumbledore, I think we are meant to see and believe loves Harry, but also isn't doing a very good job of loving him, isn't acting in a loving way. But there's this larger question at play of sort of, like, the reason that Dumbledore isn't loving Harry very well is partly because he's prioritizing love for a collective over love for Harry. Like, it's a complicated situation where it's like he is choosing which type of love to prioritize, which is making him worse at loving Harry.
Dumbledore's facing a massive trolley problem, basically.
Yeah.
And what people, you know, I really have this, I mean, Dumbledore is one of my very favorite characters, and I really find myself frustrated with a lot of the reception of him, not in spaces like this podcast, really, but, like, you know, out in the wider world, because there is this perception that, like, he doesn't care about Harry, so therefore he is sacrificing him with no compunction about it to the wider world. But many of his mistakes, you know, the flaw in the plan, literally, is love. Like, it's his love for Harry that makes him make, you know, commit actions that he wouldn't have done otherwise. But he's, you know, out of his affection and desire for Harry to have a happier life, you know, hides things from him and changes the situation in a way that he's trying to give Harry a better existence, a better time at school, you know, time with his friends. He doesn't want to, you know, burden him. And so it's love, you know, making the wrong choices or making misinformed choices or they're actually not misinformed, having the information and still making the wrong choice out of love. Yeah.
And I think that really shows the complicated nature of love, that, like, I think that it is far too simplistic to, like, if you say, oh, well, Dumbledore didn't love Harry at all, like, that is not allowing for the interesting complexity of what's going on, which is that sometimes even if you love someone very much, you might have to make choices that harm them because of other values or ideals or other types of love. And that's just, like, most of us don't have to make that choice on Dumbledore's level, but we make that choice all of the time, of prioritizing different things, and sometimes that harms people that we love, and I think that that makes it so interesting because it is complicated and real.
Yeah, he's also clearly choosing to do his very, very best to ensure that Harry is as prepared as possible to make it through.
And trying to make sure that Harry might be able to survive. Like, he doesn't know if he's going to be able to survive, but, like, trying to give him that option. Yeah.
Right. And something that really, bothers me when people's takeaway about Dumbledore and his relationship with Harry are incredibly negative about how, his interactions. Basically, this isn't love, the mess, this mess he's left you guys in. It ignores Harry's personal journey in the text. Like, that is introduced as a concept so that we as an audience understand a more adult version of love and our relationships with our, mentors and the adults in our life, and understanding they are not the headmaster from books 1 and 2, who is perfect and who can save you from anything. They are real people who are flawed, but they still love you. And even when they're doing their best to help you, they still make mistakes. And so when people are like, well, why does Harry name his son after him or whatever? It's like, because Harry processed those emotions. Now it's your turn.
And I think it's a interesting and beautiful thing where, what Harry says of, like, this isn't love, this mess he's left me in, like, I think Harry is right. He is right that is not what love is supposed to look like. That's not what love is supposed to feel like. The situation Dumbledore has put him in is a situation that we should not be putting our loved ones in. However, because there is this bigger thing at stake, that was the best way that Dumbledore could do it. Like, it's like a complicated thing where, like, in a perfect world, that's not what love should be like. But this isn't a perfect world. And so that was the best that he could do. And I think it allows for the validity of Harry's feelings of this isn't love, while also the validity of the fact that he does love him and he's doing his best. And I think this actually fits really nicely with the sort of next section was sort of about anything that we've missed about what the series believes about love as a general concept. So, not just love in terms of relationship, different types of relationship, but just like love as a concept. So anything we haven't talked about yet. And I think with Dumbledore, with Harry, and Lillian, you were just talking about this, was that Dumbledore is making these choices that because he loves Harry, to protect Harry, kind of, from the truth. And I think we see that sometimes our love for people causes us to take a sort of easier path, but that path sometimes often ultimately makes things harder for our loved one in the long run. So he is making this choice out of love to protect Harry from the truth. However, it's not the best way to love him. Like, the best way to love him would be to prioritize his long-term happiness, success, all of that over the short term. And so he's sort of like, I made a mistake. He says, I made a mistake because I loved you so much that I wanted this for you in this short term, but that made it harder for you now. Yeah, which I think is really interesting. And I think it actually even connects back to some of the, like, parents spoiling their kids, where it's like, it is so much love. You want your kid to have everything, and yet you're making it harder for your kid in the long run by making everything easy for them right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was suddenly thinking about Voldemort and, like, how he's born without love, and how I don't really like the thing of him being born from a love potion, because, like, it uncomplicates what it should be complicated. Because, like, what you said about taking the easy, path, I'm trying to connect it. It's not there. There's no connection, except that it's about love. But I just got off track in my head. Sorry.
No, I agree. I think that I'm not a big fan of the love potion thing either.
I don't think anyone is, to be fair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, my poor boyfriend had never realized, like, he didn't realize people, like, that the love potion is, like, why he essentially, doesn't have the capacity for love, or that's the implication. And I was like, I want to live in that head. Yeah. Because it sucks. It really sucks, because, being able to have these complex emotions, it's like, if Voldemort is denied that, he's a victim too. Like, totally. He's not able to he's not able to choose either of these paths. Like, of course,
Yeah.
I did it. There was a connection.
So another thing about sort of love as a general concept is that love is the most powerful force you can use to fight evil, but also that it can be used against you by evil people. And we see that, with Ginny, both in book 2, and also in when Harry decides to break things off with Ginny to protect her. It's, that loving someone can put you at risk of them manipulating that love. And even just Harry going into the forest at the very end, Voldemort is very specifically trying to manipulate Harry by saying, I will kill all of your loved ones if you don't come now. And this is something we see in so many fantasy series, and, all villains will do this, is using love sort of against the hero. But also we see that at the end of the day, it is what allows the hero to defeat the villain.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, love is the ultimate power. It's like the reason that, that message, because that message is undefined and it can be all these forms of love that, are maybe not in the, maybe aren't represented well by the original narrative. That message is so all-encompassing that it supersedes those, and it becomes, more compelling and deeply positive. I mean, it already is, but it just, it overcomes any narrative flaws that might exist.
Yeah.
I think you wanted to talk about magic related to love.
Yeah, not for too long. I had forgotten about that. I had added this point, but I should have talked about it with Lily's sacrifice, which is that there are really only a few instances in which magic is really magic in the Harry Potter series. I could do a whole thing about this where magic feels like something other than a tool. It feels like something that cannot be solved, and they become lesser and lesser as the series goes on. But Lily's sacrifice as love, it's the Fidelius charm, despite what it became in the later books, is introduced as a kind of arcane charm that exists to sort of capture a person's deep connection to another person to the point of keeping a secret for them. These instances of deep magic are so rare, but Lily's love is a indefinable, unquantifiable, there we go, source that is protecting Harry versus I am not interested in seeing a how order of operations, Lily love plus Voldemort in this spot in the bedroom equals protection that does X. That's not the point. The point is that love is something we can't quantify, and yet it rules our daily lives.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful, and I think we do see that, even just in how Harry manages to survive Voldemort's attack. It is a very it is a very mystical type thing. It's not it feels in that realm of the kind of not completely something that you can explain written down, but connected to that love of Lily's that was in his blood and then in Voldemort's blood, and it's just all of these different factors coming together, and Harry intentionally sacrificing himself, and there's so many deep magic that comes through that that's a little, you can't quite define it.
Yeah.
So shall we end with a shout out, Lillian?
Yes. I just wanted to say the greatest love of all belongs to Gilderoy Lockhart's Valentine's Day dwarf grams or whatever.
The grumpiest dwarves ever that attack you and tackle you to the ground and force you to hear bad love songs and poetry.
Exactly. So, all of this to say that Lockhart actually had the answer. The weapon we have is Valentine's Day dwarves. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the most enduring love in the series is Lockhart for himself.
Yes.
So
that's so true. Even his memory, you can take away his memory, and that doesn't take leave him anyway.
I had actually one question here before we round off. Do you guys believe that the this is very niche, that the songs that were sung by the dwarf were intentionally bad, or was it something that Ginny wrote for Harry?
I think Ginny wrote it.
I mean, I think she's stated to have written it.
She wrote it, and she's just 11 and really not great at
writing
poetry.
romantic songs.
And
yeah.
she's looking at a lot of toad ingredients in potions class.
Yes, don't let 11-year-olds write love songs. Good plan.
All right, today for the 7 ingredients of today's special,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
we have the 7 categories of love that we talked about in the 7 books of the series. So first we have romantic love. Next we have friendship love. Then we have parental love, sibling love, chosen family, teacher, student / mentor, and mentee relationship love. Or we could just say Dumbledore and Harry, because that's mainly what we talked about. But anyway, and extended family. Yay!
Woo.
Perfection.
Hey Lillian, what's playing on the pub's jukebox today?
Well, that would be Love Cannot Be Sorted by Ashley Hamill.
Thank you.
I loved a Gryffindor. He taught me how to live in the moment. We would fly on his motorbike. He made me feel alive, like I was chosen. Whispered fiercely all the love we'd see. Felt the passion in his heartbeat, but he couldn't focus his energy. And I'm tired of fighting for love. But all of the houses have given my heart nothing short of reward. And if there's one thing that I know for sure, it's that love cannot be sorted.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Lillian.
Of course. Thank you for asking.
So, Lillian, thank you so much for visiting the 3 Broomsticks. Is there anywhere that you would like people to follow you? Anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, people can follow me on Instagram at LUXA, Lucifer, Luxa Lucifer. That is, I was going to say it's my fandom account. It's just my account, and that's my life. It's fandom. But I mentioned earlier that I have a chapter in the upcoming collection, Potions, Power, and Prejudice, Reassessing the Harry Potter series, which will be about, it's called The Author Isn't Dead and She Has a Knife. How the hermeneutics of suspicion can save the Harry Potter fandom. And then you can usually catch me at, this year you will catch me at Enchanticon, and I will in Conjuration as well. I like to do sort of academic themed panels, so hopefully you'll catch me at some of those. And then, did I have anything else written down? Oh, one last plug is that I am working on a Celestial Warmbottom tribute album. She's turning 80 this year. She's our oldest wizard rocker. And so there is I can share a link for that, but she has a bunch of very fun, very upbeat sort of raunchy songs that I'm inviting people to come and cover in whatever style they choose. They can rewrite the lyrics in whatever way they choose. She's happily, coincidentally given permission for that, because it was a total this is going to be a surprise for her. But yeah, I would really love to have more people involved with that. So, and the deadline is April 30th.
Fun. Thank you for sharing. If you enjoyed your time at the pub today, please rate and review us online or tell your friends about our show. Huge thanks again to Luke Smitherman, who bought us this round of drinks at the 3 Broomsticks. And if you'd like to buy us the next round, head over to patreon.com/3broomsticks with the numeral 3 to sign up.
And if you want to find us online, we're available on various different social media platforms. So if you want to get a heads up about new episodes, comment so you can get into one of the episodes, suggest a theme, which is one of the best ways, please do so. The website is 3broomstickspod.com with the letter 3, number 3 spelled out. And of course, that is Facebook, Instagram, etc. And let us know what you think. Please leave us a review so this reaches to more people, so we get more money from Patreon. Thank you.
And next time we meet at the Three Broomsticks, we'll be discussing shipping Harry Potter, as in shipping the character Harry Potter.
Yes, not the transport of broomsticks.
Not that.
Not that, unfortunately. Which would also be very interesting, because I would like to see us discussing magic carpets in that context. Anyway.
I don't know what to do for Sierra.
Sierra's not here, so Sierra has been here. She is not here now. She says hi.
This has been Sierra.
In theory. I'm Taavi.
And I'm Sophia. Thank you for listening, and see you next time at the Three Broomsticks. Cheers!
Cheers.
Give me big old buckets of butterbeer. Give me big old barrels of butterbeer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here of the sweet old butterbeer.
This episode of The Three Broomsticks was edited by Patrick Musilek. The theme song was written and performed by the Faithful Sidekicks. Make sure to check them out at thefaithfulsidekicks.com.
Welcome to the Three Broomsticks. We invite you to pull up a chair, grab a butterbeer, and settle in for a hearty discussion about Harry Potter. I'm Sophia Jenkins.
I don't have headphones. Wow. Okay. I'm never recording again without coffee.
Oh my god.
Guys, I swear I'm good at podcasting. I swear I've done this before. Oh my god. This is really embarrassing. I'm so sorry. Can we take that intro again?
Yes. You have your headphones?
Yes.
We're ready? Okay. Sorry, now I'm laughing.
He's got himself a little bit of a conundrum there.
And the answer is, of course, be himself. But that is incredibly difficult when you're an 11-year-old. And what if yourself is worse? You know, what if you're worse than your siblings? That's the fear.
Yeah. Poor Ron.
Poor Ron.
He has more intelligence than this teaspoon.
All right, sorry, guys. My AirPods just died.
This is why we use cords.
Yeah, I'm on like my recording headphones right now.
Oh, yeah, I have an old pair of Apple corded headphones. They're actually like with the old aux connector for like a relic.
Yeah.
From a bygone era.
At least they're headphones, though. That's the important part.
Oh, yeah.